I paid $25,000 for a dream family vacation to Hawaii. But when I arrived at the airport with my bags packed, my son called me. He did not say thank you. He said, "You are not coming." Then I heard his wife in the background laughing and saying, "Finally, a vacation without that old man." I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply went home and waited. When they returned 10 days later, their keys did not fit the lock, and the package waiting for them on the doorstep made them scream in a way I will never forget. Before I tell you how I destroyed their lives, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been betrayed by your own blood. My name is Bernard Jefferson, and I am 70 years old. I stood in the middle of the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport clutching a small leather carry-on bag. The noise of thousands of travelers surrounded me, but I felt completely alone. I checked the departure board one more time. Flight 492 to Honolulu, first class, boarding in 40 minutes. I had arrived 2 hours early, just like I used to do when I ran my construction crews. Being early meant being prepared. I looked down at the 3 boarding passes in my hand. One for me, one for my son Tyrell, and one for his wife Paige. This trip was supposed to be my gift to them for their 10th wedding anniversary. $25,000. That was the number ringing in my head. I had not just paid for the flights. I had paid for a 5-star resort in Maui. I had paid for the all-inclusive package that included unlimited food, drinks, and spa treatments. I wanted them to feel special. I wanted to feel like a family again. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Tyrell. I smiled, thinking they were finally at the terminal. I answered, expecting to hear him ask where I was standing. "Dad, where are you?" Tyrell asked. His voice sounded tight, nervous. "I am at gate B12, son," I said. "I have the boarding passes printed out. I am waiting for you too." There was a long silence on the other end. The kind of silence that usually precedes bad news on a construction site. The kind of silence that means a wall has collapsed or a pipe has burst. Dad listened. Tyrell started, his voice shaking slightly. "There is a problem with your ticket. I just got an alert on my app. It says your seat was overbooked. The airline bumped you." I looked at the paper ticket in my hand. It had my name on it. Bernard Jefferson, seat 1A. I looked at the gate agent. They were boarding families with small children. There was no announcement about overbooking. "That does not make sense, Tyrell," I said calmly. "I am looking at the agent right now. I can go talk to them and fix it." "No, do not do that," Tyrell shouted. He sounded panicked. "Dad, just go home. The airline said they will refund you later. It is a mess. Paige and I are already on the plane. They let us board early through the back entrance because of Paige's anxiety. Just go home, Dad. We will FaceTime you when we land." He was lying. I knew my son. I knew the tone he used when he was trying to hide a bad report card or when he scratched my car in high school. He was lying to me. But why? Then I heard it, the sound that shattered my heart. The phone must have slipped from his mouth, or maybe he thought he had muted it. I heard Paige's voice. It was crystal clear. "Oh my God, Tyrell, stop explaining to him," she said. Her voice was dripping with that familiar disdain she usually tried to hide. "Just tell him to leave. Finally, we can have a vacation without that old man. I do not want to smell his arthritis cream on the beach. It is our anniversary, not a nursing home field trip." I froze. The noise of the airport faded away. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Arthritis cream. Old man. Tyrell came back on the line. "Dad, are you there? Look, it is for the best. You know how your legs get swollen on long flights? You would just be miserable. Go home and rest. We need our space anyway." He did not defend me. He did not tell her to stop. He agreed with her. My son, the boy I had raised alone after his mother Etta died, working double shifts to pay for his private school, was throwing me away like trash. I looked at the ticket in my hand again. I thought about how I paid for these tickets. I did not take the money from my retirement fund. I did not take it from the interest on my investments. I sold my truck. It was a 1975 Ford F-150. Etta and I bought it together when we started Jefferson Construction 40 years ago. It was the first new thing we ever owned. I had restored it bolt by bolt. It was my pride. It was my memory of Etta. But 2 months ago, Paige had come to dinner and complained that her back hurt. She said she could not fly to Hawaii in coach. She said if they had to fly coach, they might as well not go. Tyrell looked at me with those pleading eyes. So I sold the truck. I got $30,000 for it from a collector. I used $25,000 to upgrade their seats to first class and book the best suite in the hotel. I sold my past to buy their comfort. And now they were laughing at me. Okay, son, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice I used when I had to fire a dishonest worker. I understand. You two have a safe flight. I did not wait for his answer. I hung up the phone. I stood there for a moment watching the line of passengers boarding the plane. I could see the jet bridge. My son and his wife were somewhere down that tunnel drinking the champagne I paid for, sitting in the leather seats I bought with my truck, laughing about how they had tricked the old man. A young woman in a blue uniform approached me. "Sir, are you boarding?" she asked kindly. "We are about to close the doors." I looked at her. Her name tag said Ms. Robinson. She had a kind face, a face that reminded me of Etta. "No, ma," I said. "I am not boarding." I walked over to the counter. The computer screen was glowing. Ms. Robinson looked concerned. "Is everything all right, Mr. Jefferson? I see you have a first-class ticket. It is a shame to waste it." I placed my hand on the counter, my worker hands, rough, calloused, dark skin that had weathered 40 years of Georgia sun, hands that had built half the schools in this county. "Ms. Robinson." "I have a question," I said. "The reservation for Tyrell and Paige Jefferson. It is under my account, correct?" She typed quickly. "Yes, sir. You are the primary purchaser. All expenses are paid by your American Express card. And the hotel package I asked, the Grand Wailea Resort, the all-inclusive service, the spa access, the private dinners, is all of that confirmed?" She checked another screen. "Yes, sir. It is all confirmed and paid in full. It is a non-refundable booking, but since you are the purchaser, you have full control. Do you want to cancel their tickets? I can try to pull them off the plane before we push back." The question hung in the air. I could stop them right now. I could have security march onto that plane and drag them off. I could humiliate them in front of the entire first-class cabin. It would be satisfying. It would be loud. But Bernard Jefferson does not make loud mistakes. I learned a long time ago in the construction business that if you find a rot in the foundation, you do not just paint over it, and you do not just smash it with a hammer immediately. You inspect the damage, you secure the perimeter, and then you tear the whole thing down systematically so it never hurts anyone again. "No, Ms. Robinson," I said. My voice was cold as ice. "Do not cancel the flight. Let them fly. I want them to land in Hawaii. I want them to get to the hotel." She looked confused, but she nodded. "Okay, Mr. Jefferson. Is there anything else I can do for you?" "Yes," I said. "Ensure that the receipt for the hotel package is emailed to me immediately. And Ms. Robinson, have a blessed day." I turned around and walked away from the gate. I dropped my boarding pass into the trash can next to a half-eaten bagel. I did not look back. I walked through the terminal, past the happy families going on vacation, past the couples holding hands. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't pain anymore. It was clarity. For 10 years since Etta died, I had been making excuses for Tyrell. I told myself he was grieving. I told myself Paige was just stressed. I told myself that if I just gave them a little more money, a little more help, they would finally stand on their own feet and respect me. I was a fool. I had raised a parasite, and parasites do not leave until the host is dry. I walked out of the sliding glass doors into the humid Atlanta heat. I did not call my driver. I opened the Uber app on my phone. I ordered the cheapest ride available. While I waited for the car, I took out my phone again. I opened my banking app. I looked at the transactions. $25,000 pending for the travel agency. $5,000 pending for the cash transfer I had sent to Tyrell yesterday for spending money. I scrolled down. I saw a charge from yesterday on the supplementary credit card I had given Tyrell. It was supposed to be for emergencies or for things for my grandson. The charge was for $2,000. The merchant was Shady Pines Senior Living, a deposit. I stared at the screen. Shady Pines was the cheapest nursing home in the city. It was the place where people sent their elderly relatives to be forgotten. It had been on the news for health violations. Tyrell had used my own card, the card I paid for, to put a deposit down on a nursing home for me. So that was the plan. They go to Hawaii on my dime. They come back. They sell my house. And they dump me in Shady Pines. A beat-up Toyota Camry pulled up to the curb. My Uber. I got in the back seat. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Home," I said. But I knew as the car pulled onto the highway that I was not going home to rest. I was going home to war. The ride took 40 minutes. I watched the city of Atlanta pass by. I built many of these buildings. I started with a shovel and a wheelbarrow. I fought banks that would not give loans to a black man in the 70s. I fought inspectors who tried to shut me down. I survived recessions. I survived the loss of my wife. Tyrell and Paige thought I was just a senile old man who smelled like medicine. They thought I was weak because I was generous. They forgot who I am. They forgot that you do not get to be a 70-year-old black man with a paid-off mansion in Buckhead by being soft. The Uber dropped me off at the driveway. My house stood on the hill. It was a beautiful brick colonial, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a manicured lawn. I bought this house 15 years ago. I put Tyrella's name on the deed alongside mine 2 years ago because he said it would help his credit score. He said it was just a formality. I walked up the steps. The house was dark, empty. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence was heavy. It smelled of Paige's expensive perfume, the one I bought her for Christmas. I did not take off my shoes. I walked straight to Tyrella's home office. The door was closed. I did not knock. I turned the handle. Locked. I went to the garage and got a crowbar. I did not hesitate. I jammed the metal claw into the frame and pulled. Wood splintered. The lock gave way with a loud crack. I walked into the office. I sat down at his desk. I started opening drawers. In the bottom drawer, hidden under some magazines, I found a folder. It was labeled Dad. I opened it. Inside was a contract from a real estate agent. It was a listing agreement for my house. It was dated for next week. The asking price was $1.2 million. There was a note clipped to it in Paige's handwriting. Sell fast. Price low for cash offer. Need funds liquid before he changes his will. I laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound in the empty house. They thought they had it all figured out. They thought the old man was helpless. I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I had not called in a long time. Strickland Law Firm, a woman answered. "Put Mrs. Strickland on the line," I said. "Tell her it is Bernard Jefferson. Tell her it is an emergency." A moment later, a sharp voice came on the line. "Bernard, is everything okay? I haven't heard from you in years." I leaned back in my son's chair. I looked at the real estate contract. "Viola," I said using her first name, "I need you to do something for me. You remember that clause 13 we talked about when I set up the deed for this house? The one Tyrell never bothered to read?" There was a pause. "The revocable trust clause. The one that gives you absolute power to revoke ownership if the beneficiary acts against your interest." "Yes, that is the one," I said. "Bernard, that is the nuclear option. If we trigger that, Tyrell loses everything. The house. The equity. His credit rating will be destroyed." "Are you sure?" I looked at the picture on the desk. It was Tyrell and Paige smiling on a boat. They looked happy. They looked rich. They looked like they didn't have a care in the world. I thought about my truck. I thought about the nursing home deposit. I thought about the smell of arthritis cream. "I am sure, Viola," I said. "Trigger it. And while you are at it, draft an eviction notice. I want it ready for when they land." I hung up the phone. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the street. They were in the air now, flying over the Pacific Ocean, drinking champagne, thinking they had won. Let them enjoy the flight, because when they land, the ground is going to disappear beneath their feet. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of bourbon. I sat in my armchair in the dark. I had 10 days. 10 days to prepare their welcome home gift. I took a sip of the drink. It burned going down. It felt good. The vacation was over. The lesson was just beginning. The glass of bourbon sat empty on the side table, leaving a sticky ring on the mahogany surface. I stared at it for a long time. The silence in my house was usually a comfort. It was the quiet of a job well done. The quiet of a man who has earned his rest. But tonight the silence felt heavy. It felt like the air in a room just before a storm breaks. It was suffocating. I stood up and my knees popped. Paige would have made a face if she heard that sound. She would have wrinkled her nose and made a comment about old age and decay. I walked out of the living room and into the grand foyer. My footsteps echoed on the marble floors. I laid these floors myself 20 years ago. I selected the stone from a quarry in Italy. I spent 3 weeks on my knees making sure the grout lines were perfect. Every inch of this house had my sweat in it. Every beam and every nail was a testament to the life I built for my family. But as I looked around, something felt wrong. The house felt too empty. It felt sterile. I walked to the mantel where we kept the family photos. The picture of Etta and me on our wedding day was gone. The photo of Tyrell graduating from college was gone. The picture of my grandson taking his first steps was gone. The mantel was bare except for a generic vase with fake flowers. I walked to the dining room. The china cabinet was empty. Etta's collection of porcelain figurines, which she had loved more than her jewelry, was missing. They had staged the house. I realized it with a jolt that made my stomach turn. They had not just planned to sell it, they had already started packing. They had removed all the personal items to make the house look like a model home for potential buyers. They erased me. They erased Etta. They erased our history to make the property more appealing to a cash buyer. I walked back to Tyrella's home office. The doorframe was splintered where I had forced it open earlier. I sat back down in his chair. It was an expensive ergonomic chair that cost more than my first car. I looked at the desk. I had found the contract, but I knew there was more. Tyrell was lazy. He never threw anything away. He just shoved his problems into drawers and hoped they would disappear. The top drawer was locked. I did not have the key. In the past, I would have stopped there. I respected a man's privacy. I taught Tyrell that a man's desk is his castle, and you do not enter without an invitation. But Tyrell had broken the covenant between father and son. He had forfeited his right to privacy when he left me at the airport. I went to the garage and came back with a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. I wedged the screwdriver into the gap above the lock. I struck the handle with the hammer. Once, twice. The wood groaned and the metal lock mechanism snapped with a sharp ping. I pulled the drawer open. It was a mess of papers, unpaid parking tickets, notices from the IRS, gambling slips. I pushed them aside. I was looking for the plan. I knew Paige. She was organized. She wrote everything down. At the bottom of the drawer, under a stack of car magazines, I found a thick manila envelope. It was not labeled. I opened it and slid the contents onto the desk. The first thing that slid out was a glossy brochure. The colors were bright and cheerful. It showed an elderly couple smiling while playing chess in a sunlit room. Shady Pines Senior Living Community. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I knew Shady Pines. I had bid on a renovation contract there 10 years ago. I walked the halls. I saw the rooms. It was not a community. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. The smell of bleach could never quite cover the scent of urine and despair. The staff was overworked and underpaid. The food was gray mush. It was the cheapest facility in the state. I flipped the brochure open. Someone had circled the economy package with a red marker. It was a semi-private room, a shared room. 2 men to a closet-sized space separated by a thin curtain. This was their plan for me. While they slept in a suite in Hawaii, drinking cocktails and watching the sunset, I would be staring at a water-stained ceiling tile, listening to a stranger cough in the bed next to me. I closed my eyes. A memory washed over me. It was 1985. I was standing on this plot of land. It was just red Georgia clay and pine trees then. Etta was standing next to me. She was wearing her Sunday dress and her shoes were dusty. We had just been denied a loan by the third bank that week. The loan officer had looked at my hands and then at Etta's dark skin and told us we were high risk. I was ready to give up. I was ready to buy a small condo in the city and call it a day. But Etta grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong. She looked me in the eye. "Bernard," she said, "you build this house. You build it with your own hands if you have to. You build us a castle. I want a place where no one can ever tell us we do not belong. I want a place where our son can run in the yard and feel like a king." I built it for her. I worked 18-hour days. I poured the foundation in the rain. I framed the walls in the blistering heat. I built a castle just like she asked. And when she got sick, I carried her up the stairs to the master bedroom so she could look out at the trees she loved. She died in this house. Her spirit was in the walls. And now her son wanted to sell her castle for quick cash and throw me into a hole to rot. I opened my eyes. My vision was blurry, but not from tears. It was from a rage so hot it felt like I had swallowed a live coal. I looked at the papers again. Stapled to the back of the brochure was a receipt. It was a receipt for the intake deposit at Shady Pines, $2,500. non-refundable. I looked at the payment method. It listed the last 4 digits of a credit card. I pulled out my wallet. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my American Express Gold card, the one I had given Tyrell as an authorized user 5 years ago. I told him it was for emergencies. I told him it was for my grandson as school supplies or if his car broke down. The numbers matched. He had paid for my prison with my own money. He used the credit line I built over 40 years of hard work to pay the deposit to lock me away. I let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. It echoed in the empty house. They were not just cruel, they were cheap. They did not even want to spend their own money to get rid of me. They wanted me to finance my own disposal. I dug deeper into the envelope. There was a printout of an email chain between Paige and a real estate agent named Brenda. "Brenda, we need to move fast," Paige wrote. "The old man is going to be out of the picture by the end of the month. We need the house listed as soon as he is gone. We are pricing it at $1.2 million for a quick cash close. We have some debts we need to clear immediately." $1.2 million, the agent replied. "That is significantly under market value for that neighborhood. It is worth at least 1.6. "We do not care about market value," Paige responded. "We care about speed. Just get it done while we are in Hawaii. We want the papers ready to sign the day we get back." They were willing to lose $400,000 just to get the cash fast. They were desperate. Why were they so desperate? I looked at the dates on the emails. They started 3 months ago, right around the time Tyrell started asking me about my will, right around the time Paige started complaining about my health, saying I looked frail, saying I was forgetting things. It was a setup. All of it. The concerns about my memory were lies. The sudden interest in my well-being was a trap. They were gaslighting me. They wanted to make me doubt my own mind so I would go quietly. I gathered the papers. I put them back in the envelope. I stood up and walked out of the office. I needed air. I walked to the back patio. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. I looked at the garden Etta had planted. The rose bushes were overgrown. Tyrell had promised to prune them, but he never did. I walked over to the tool shed. Inside, my tools were hung on the pegboard. My hammers, my saws, my levels. They were clean and oiled. I took care of my tools because they took care of me. I picked up a heavy sledgehammer. I weighed it in my hand. It felt familiar. It felt like power. I walked back into the house. I stood in the living room. I looked at the wall where the big flat-screen television hung. Paige had demanded that television. She said the old one was too small. I paid $3,000 for it. I looked at the Italian leather sofa. Tyrell said he needed it for his back. $5,000. I looked at the crystal chandelier in the dining room. Paige said it made the house look classy. $4,000. All of it bought with my money. All of it bought with the sweat of my brow. They wanted to sell my house. They wanted to sell my life. Well, if they wanted to sell it, they could sell the shell. Because everything inside, everything they coveted, everything they used to pretend they were rich was about to disappear. I was not going to let them have a single spoon, not a single painting, not a single thread of a rug. I took out my phone. I dialed the number for a moving company I had used on my construction sites. It was after hours, but the owner owed me a favor. "Mike." "It is, Bernard," I said when he answered. "Bernard." "It is late. Is everything okay?" "I need a crew." "Mike," I said. "I need a big truck, and I need them here in an hour." "What are we moving?" Mike asked. "Everything," I said. "We are emptying the house. Every stick of furniture, every appliance, every rug. I want this place stripped to the studs." "Bernard, are you moving? Did you sell the place?" "No," I said. "I am just doing a little spring cleaning. I am evicting the rats." There was a pause. I could hear Mike shifting on the line. He knew me. He knew I didn't make rash decisions. "Okay, Bernard. I will have the boys there in 45 minutes. Where are we taking it?" "Take it to the auction house," I said. "Sell it all. Whatever you get, donate it to the trade school in Etta's name. I do not want a penny of it. I just want it gone." I hung up. I walked back to the office. I looked at the Shady Pines brochure one last time. I took a lighter from my pocket. I lit the corner of the brochure. I watched the picture of the smiling couple curl and blacken. I watched the fire eat the lie. When the flame reached my fingers, I dropped the burning paper into the metal trash can. I watched it turn to ash. "You want to put me in a home, Tyrell?" I whispered to the empty room. "You want to take my castle. You are going to find out that a castle without a king is just a pile of rocks, and the king is not dead yet. I went to the kitchen and poured another bourbon. I sat on the stool and waited for the truck. I had work to do, and for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. The morning sun hit the glass facade of First Liberty Bank in downtown Atlanta, blinding me for a second. I adjusted my sunglasses and walked toward the revolving doors. I did not walk like a retiree. I walked like the man who had poured the concrete for this very building 30 years ago. I walked like a man who owned the ground he stood on. I had an appointment with Silas Vance, the branch manager. Silas and I went back 20 years. I gave him his first big commercial contract when he was just a junior loan officer trying to make a quota. He owed me. And today I was coming to collect. The air conditioning inside was cold enough to preserve meat. It was the smell of money, crisp, sterile, impersonal. I walked past the line of people waiting for tellers. I walked straight to the glass office in the back. Silas saw me coming. He stood up immediately, buttoning his suit jacket. He looked older than the last time I saw him. Grayer, tired. "Bernard," he said, extending a hand. "I did not expect to see you today. I thought you were in Hawaii." "Plans changed, Silas," I said. I did not shake his hand. I sat down in the leather chair opposite his desk. Silas slowly lowered his hand. He sensed the mood. He closed the door and sat down. "Is everything all right, Bernard? You look like you want to hit something." "I want to see the books, Silas," I said. "I want a full forensic audit of every account connected to my name. My personal accounts, the joint account with Tyrell, and specifically the business account for PJ Consulting." Silas frowned. "PJ Consulting. That is, Page is business, right? The online marketing firm." I laughed. It was a dry sound. "Marketing firm. Yes, that is what she calls it." "I want to see the statements, Silas. 5 years. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer." Silas hesitated. "Bernard, you know the privacy laws. Page is the primary on that account. Tyrell is secondary. You are just the guarantor." I leaned forward. The leather of the chair creaked. "I am the guarantor, Silas. That means if that account goes into the red, I am the one who pays. That gives me the right to know what I am guaranteeing. Do not quote policy to me. Just print the damn papers." Silas looked at me for a long moment. He saw the look in my eyes. It was the same look I gave him in 2008 when the market crashed and I told him to hold my line of credit or I would pull every dime I had. He nodded. He typed on his keyboard. The printer in the corner started to hum. It took 10 minutes to print everything. The stack of paper was 3 inches thick. I put on my reading glasses. I wet my thumb. I started to read. The first year was innocent enough. Small expenses, office supplies, a laptop, internet bills, justified costs for a startup. But then in the second year, the pattern changed. I saw a withdrawal of $500, cash, then another, then a transfer of $1,000. The recipient was listed as C. Thorne. I kept turning the pages. The amounts grew. $2,000, $3,000. By the third year, PJ Consulting was bleeding money, but there was no income, not a single client payment. The only money coming into the account was the monthly transfer of $4,000 from the joint account I shared with Tyrell. My money. I looked at the outflows. Rent payment. Buckhead Lofts. $3,200 a month. I froze. Page and Tyrell lived in my house. They did not pay rent. Why was a business account paying rent for a luxury apartment in Buckhead? I looked at the recipient of the rent checks. C. Thorne. I looked at car payments. A lease on a BMW M3. $1,100 a month. Driver listed on the insurance. Caleb Thorne. I looked at the memo lines on the digital transfers. "Happy birthday, baby. For the trouble. Keep quiet." I felt a bile rise in my throat. It tasted like acid. "Who is Caleb Thorne Silas?" I asked without looking up. Silas looked uncomfortable. He typed on his computer. According to the notes on the file when they opened the account, Page listed him as an independent contractor, a consultant. A consultant, I repeated. I pulled out my phone. I searched the name Caleb Thorne, Atlanta. A profile popped up immediately. A personal trainer. 30 years old. White, blonde hair, muscles on top of muscles. His profile picture showed him leaning against a BMW M3, the same car my money was paying for. I scrolled down his photos. There was one from 3 years ago. He was at a bar. His arm was around a woman. Her face was turned away from the camera, but I recognized the dress. I recognized the diamond watch. It was Paige. The caption read, "My #1 investor." I dropped the phone on the desk. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet office. It was not a business. It was a slush fund. Paige had been taking the money I gave Tyrell to support his family, and she was funneling it to her lover. She was paying his rent. She was buying his car. She was funding his life while she complained that my house was too small and my furniture was too old. And Tyrell, my son, he had access to these accounts. He could see these statements anytime he wanted. Was he blind? Or was he so desperate to keep her that he let her rob him blind while she slept with another man? I looked at the total at the bottom of the last page, $214,000. That was the total amount transferred out of the family accounts into the void that was Caleb Thorne over 5 years. $200,000. That was Etta's life insurance money. That was the college fund for the grandchildren I never had. That was the sweat off my back from 1,000 hot Georgia summers. Gone. Spent on a gigolo for a woman who hated me. I closed the folder. My hands were remarkably steady. The rage I felt earlier had crystallized into something else. It was no longer hot. It was cold. It was absolute. "Silas," I said. "Yes, Bernard, I want you to flag this account for fraud." Silas blinked. "Fraud. Bernard, if Paige authorized these payments, it is not technically bank fraud. It is misuse of funds, but—" I stood up. I loomed over his desk. "She obtained the funds under false pretenses. Silas, she solicited investment from the primary account for a business that does not exist. That is fraud. That is embezzlement. And since the money crossed state lines on that trip they took to Miami last year, it might be wire fraud too. Freeze it." Silas swallowed hard. "Okay. I will put a temporary hold on it pending investigation. But Bernard, if you do this, checks will bounce. The rent for that apartment, the car payment, let them bounce," I said. "Let them bounce so high they hit the moon." I walked out of the office. I did not say goodbye. I walked out into the heat of the Atlanta afternoon. The city sounded different now. The traffic noise sounded like war drums. I took out my phone again. I dialed a number I had saved for emergencies. Viola Strickland answered on the second ring. She was the best estate attorney in Georgia. She was a shark in a Chanel suit. We had dated briefly 40 years ago before I met Etta, and we had remained friends. She knew where all the bodies were buried because she had helped dig the holes. "Bernard," she said. Her voice was sharp. "I got your message about the house deed. I am drafting the revocation papers now. But you sound different." "What happened?" "I just left the bank." "Viola," I said. I was walking toward a bench on the sidewalk. I needed to sit down. My legs felt heavy, not from age, but from the weight of the truth. And Viola asked, "It is worse than we thought," I said. "It is not just the house. It is everything. Paige has been siphoning money, hundreds of thousands. She has a boyfriend, Viola. She is keeping a man on the side with my money. And Tyrell. That boy is either the biggest fool in America or he has no spine at all." Viola was silent for a moment. Then I heard the sound of a pen scratching aggressively on paper. "Okay, Bernard," she said. "The strategy just changed. We are not just evicting them, we are going scorched earth." "Yes," I said. I watched a young father walking down the street holding his son his hand. The boy was looking up at his dad with adoration. I remembered when Tyrell looked at me like that. I remembered when I thought I was building a legacy for a king. I had built a palace for a jester. "Viola," I said, "I want you to prepare a file. I want to sue for restitution. I want to file a civil suit against Paige for conversion of funds. And I want to report the gift tax violations to the IRS, Bernard, Viola warned. Her voice dropped an octave. "If you call the IRS on your own son, you are crossing a line you can never uncross. He will be audited. He will face penalties. He could face jail time if he was complicit. You are talking about destroying his life completely." I looked at the bank building behind me. I thought about the $200,000. I thought about the nursing home brochure. I thought about the arthritis cream comment. "He destroyed his own life, Viola," I said. "I am just turning on the light so he can see the wreckage." "Are you sure, Bernard?" she asked. "You have to be colder than ice to do this to your own flesh and blood. You have to be tanners than you think you are." I thought about the cliff. Not a real cliff, but the metaphorical one they had pushed me off of at the airport. They had thrown me away. They had left me for dead. Left. "I am not just cold, Viola," I said. "I am frozen." "Do it," I said. "I want to take it all back. The house, the cars, the jewelry, the clothes on their backs." If I paid for it, I want it back. I want them naked, Viola. I want them to know what it feels like to have absolutely nothing in this world but the skin you are in, because that is what they left me with. I heard Viola take a deep breath. All right, Bernard, I will have the papers ready by morning, but get ready. When this hits them, they are going to scream. Let them scream, I said. I won't be listening. I hung up the phone. I sat on the bench for a long time watching the world go by. I felt a strange sense of calm. The uncertainty was gone. The hope that things might get better was gone. Hope is a heavy thing to carry when it is false. Now that I had dropped it, I felt light. I stood up and hailed a cab. "Driver, take me to the luxury car dealership on Peachtree," I said. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. "You buying a car, sir?" "No," I said. "I am repossessing one. I had the spare key to the Mercedes I had bought Tyrell for his birthday last year. It was parked in my garage, but I was not going to drive it. I was going to trade it in. I was going to trade in every remnant of their life for cash. And then I was going to use that cash to build a wall so high they would never be able to climb over it again." The audit was over. The execution was about to begin. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. It was not the expensive reserve bottle Tyrell liked to drink when he came over to pretend he enjoyed my company. It was the cheap stuff, the kind that burns the throat and reminds you that you are alive. I sat in my leather armchair in the semi-darkness of my living room. The only light came from the screen of my iPad resting on my lap. I was watching a small white plane icon move slowly across a digital map. Flight 492. It was currently cruising at 35,000 feet somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. They were 4 hours away from Honolulu. I closed my eyes and imagined the scene inside that plane. I knew exactly what was happening because I paid for it. They were sitting in seats 1A and 1B, the seats that lay flat into beds. A flight attendant was probably pouring Dom Perignon into a crystal flute for Paige. She was probably taking a selfie holding the glass against the window, making sure the first-class logo was visible in the frame. Tyrell was probably stretching out his legs laughing at some joke she made about the old man back in Atlanta. They felt like royalty. They felt untouchable. They were literally above the world, disconnected from reality. I took a sip of the cheap whiskey. It tasted like gasoline and justice. It was time to cut the engine. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the back of my American Express Platinum card. This was the primary account. The trunk of the tree from which all their financial branches grew. Tyrell had a supplementary card. Paige had a supplementary card. They carried those black squares of plastic like shields. They thought the power in those cards belonged to them. They forgot that I was the one who paid the annual fees. A polite voice answered on the first ring. "Thank you for calling American Express, Mr. Jefferson. How can I help you today?" "I need to report a security concern," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice of a man making a business decision, not a father destroying his son. "I am listening, sir," the agent said. "I have reason to believe that the authorized user cards on my account have been compromised," I said. "There has been unauthorized activity, significant activity." I was not lying. Using my credit to pay for a nursing home deposit behind my back was unauthorized. Funding a secret lover was unauthorized. It was a breach of trust. And in my world, a breach of trust is a security threat. "I see," the agent said. "We can suspend the cards immediately. Which cards would you like to freeze?" "All of them," I said. "Specifically the cards issued to Tyrell Jefferson and Paige Jefferson. I want them reported as lost or stolen. I want the account numbers burned. I want any attempting transaction to be declined with a code red referral." "Are you sure, Mr. Jefferson?" the agent asked. "This will leave the users without access to funds. If they are traveling, it could be inconvenient." Inconvenient. I thought about the word. Inconvenient was raising a child alone for 30 years only to have him plot your demise. Inconvenient was waking up in a nursing home bed smelling of bleach. "I am sure," I said. "Shut them down." "Done," the agent said. "Is there anything else?" "Yes," I said. "I have a joint checking account at First Liberty. I want to transfer the entire balance to my personal savings account, leave the checking account with a zero balance, and cancel overdraft protection." "But sir," the agent sounded confused. "That is a bank transaction. I can only handle the credit cards." I apologized. I was already moving to the next step in my head. I hung up and called the private wealth line for my bank. Within 10 minutes, it was done. The operating capital of Tyrell and Paige Jefferson was gone. The credit lines were severed. The cash flow was damned. I looked back at the iPad. The little white plane was still moving across the blue screen. They were halfway there now. They were drinking champagne in the sky, and down here on Earth, they were already bankrupt. I sat there for 4 more hours. I watched the sun go down. I watched the little plane icon begin its descent. I knew the itinerary. I had booked it. A private limousine service was scheduled to meet them at baggage claim. It was a prepaid reservation, but the incidentals and the tip required a credit card swipe upon arrival. The plane icon touched the island of Oahu. Landed, I could see it in my mind. The humidity hitting them as they walked off the jet bridge. The smell of orchids. The false sense of paradise. They would walk to baggage claim, their Louis Vuitton bags rolling smoothly on the floor. Paige would be complaining about the heat. Tyrell would be checking his phone, waiting for the signal to reconnect, unaware that his service plan was about to be suspended too because I paid that bill as well. They would walk out to the curb. The driver would be there holding a sign, Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson. They would smile. They would feel important. The driver would load their bags, and then the moment of truth. I imagined the driver pulling out his mobile terminal. He would ask for a card for the security deposit and gratuity hold. Tyrell would reach into his wallet. He would pull out the heavy black metal card. He would hand it over with that casual arrogance he had developed over the years. The arrogance of a man who has never had a card declined in his life. The driver would swipe it. Processing, declined. I imagined the look on Tyrell's face, a flicker of confusion. He would laugh nervously. Try it again, he would say. The chip is probably dirty. The driver would try again. Declined. Pickup card, contact issuer. Tyrell would frown. He would pull out the backup Visa, the one connected to the joint checking account. Declined. Insufficient funds. Now the sweat on his forehead would not be from the humidity. It would be cold fear. Paige would sigh loudly. She would roll her eyes. God, Tyrell, just let me do it. You probably forgot to pay the bill. She would pull out her card. The one she used to pay for her boyfriend's car. The one she thought was her personal piggy bank. She would hand it to the driver with a condescending smile. Declined. Stolen card alert. The driver's face would change. The smile would vanish. A limousine driver knows the look of money, but he also knows the smell of fraud. 3 declined cards. One flagged as stolen. I imagined the driver taking the bags out of the trunk. I imagined him setting them on the curb. I am sorry, folks, he would say. I cannot take you without a valid payment method. Company policy. Wait, Tyrell would say, his voice rising. Do you know who I am? My father is Bernard Jefferson. This is a mistake. Just take us to the hotel. We will sort it out there. The driver would shake his head. He would get back in his car. He would drive away, leaving them standing in the exhaust fumes. I took another sip of whiskey. I checked the time. It was now midnight in Atlanta, 6 in the afternoon in Hawaii. My phone rang. It was Tyrell. I let it ring. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Then a text message appeared. Dad, pick up. Major emergency. Cards aren't working. Think bank made mistake. Stuck at airport. I deleted the message. Another text. Dad, please. This is embarrassing. Paige is freaking out. Call the bank. Fix this. Fix this. That was his mantra. Dad, fix this. Dad, I crashed the car. Fix this. Dad, I failed the exam. Fix this. Dad, I spent too much money. Fix this. Not this time, son. I broke this. And I broke it so well that all the king is horses and all the king is men could not put it back together again. I imagined them counting their cash. Tyrell never carried much cash. He said it was for old people. He probably had $40 in his wallet. Paige might have a 20. The fare to the Grand Wailea was expensive. A taxi would cost them $100 at least. They were stranded. I watched the phone light up again. Paige was calling this time. I let it ring. They were realizing that the magic plastic in their pockets was just plastic. Without my name backing it up, they were nobody. They would have to take a shared shuttle, or a bus, or beg a taxi driver to take them as far as their cash would go. They would be furious. They would be blaming the bank. They would be blaming me for being incompetent. They would be telling each other that the old man must have forgotten to pay the bill because of his senility. They still did not get it. They thought this was an error, a glitch in the matrix of their privileged lives. They did not know that the matrix had been shut down. I stood up. I walked to the window. The street lights were humming. I had cut them off in midair. I had clipped their wings, but the fall had only just begun. They still had the hotel. They thought they had a safe harbor waiting for them. They thought they could get to the resort, scream at the manager, and get everything comped because of the inconvenience. They were wrong. I went back to the kitchen. I washed my glass. I dried it and put it away in the cupboard. I was tired. It was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes after a long day of demolition. I walked to my bedroom. I passed the guest room where my grandson used to sleep when he visited. It was empty now. I closed the door. I lay down in my bed. The sheets were cool. Tomorrow I would wake up and continue the work. But for tonight I could sleep soundly knowing that my son and his wife were currently dragging their heavy suitcases toward a bus stop in Honolulu, sweating, cursing, and wondering why the world had suddenly stopped obeying their commands. I closed my eyes. "Welcome to Paradise, Tyrell," I whispered in the dark. "I hope you brought good walking shoes." I sat in my kitchen in Atlanta watching the clock on the microwave. It was 5 in the afternoon here, which meant it was 11 in the morning in Maui. They had finally arrived. I knew the timeline perfectly because I had built it. I had constructed this disaster with the same precision I used to frame a house. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and closed my eyes. I could see it all in my mind. Tyrell and Paige were standing in the open-air lobby of the Grand Wailea. It is a magnificent place. Waterfalls, koi ponds, the smell of expensive orchids and ocean salt. But my son and his wife did not look like they belonged in paradise. They looked like refugees from a war they did not know they were fighting. They had managed to get there. They probably spent the last of their cash on a shared shuttle bus sitting next to a family of 5 with crying babies. Their clothes were wrinkled from the flight. They were sweating in the humidity. Tyrell was dragging the heavy Louis Vuitton suitcases because they did not have small bills to tip a bellman. They walked up to the front desk. Paige pushed her sunglasses up into her hair, trying to look like the wealthy housewife she pretended to be. Tyrell wiped the sweat from his forehead and put on his best smile, the smile he used when he wanted money. "I checked in for Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson," he would say. "We are in the presidential suite." The receptionist would smile, a polite, professional smile. "Let me pull that up for you, sir." I imagined the clicking of the keyboard, the pause, the slight frown on the receptionist's face. "I see the reservation here, Mr. Jefferson," she would say. But there seemed to be some changes made by the primary account holder. Tyrell would laugh nervously. Changes. What kind of changes? My father probably just added a spa package or a private dinner. He loves to spoil us. The receptionist would shake her head. "No, sir. The all-inclusive package has been removed." I could hear the silence that would follow that statement. The all-inclusive package was everything. It was the $300 dinners. It was the endless cocktails by the pool. It was the couple's massage. It was the room service at 2 in the morning. Without it, the resort was just a very expensive place to sleep. Removed Paige would snap, her voice rising. "What do you mean, removed? We have wristbands waiting for us. We have reservations at Humu Humu Nuku Nuku Apwa'a tonight." The receptionist would turn the screen slightly. The meal plan, the beverage package, and the resort credit were all canceled yesterday by Mr. Bernard Jefferson. He requested a refund of those specific line items to his original form of payment. The reservation is now room only. Room only. Those 2 words were a death sentence for their vacation. A hamburger at the pool cost $30. A cocktail cost $25. And they did not have a working credit card between them. They did not have enough cash to buy a bottle of water. But wait, Tyrell would say, his hands gripping the marble counter. "At least we have the room, the suite. We can just relax in the room and order pizza or something." The receptionist would look at him with pity. "That is the other thing, Mr. Jefferson. Since the presidential suite was part of a bundled promotion that was canceled, the room category had to be adjusted to match the remaining prepaid balance." "Adjusted?" Paige would ask, her voice trembling. "Adjusted to what?" "To a standard room," she would say. "Garden view." I laughed in my kitchen. Garden view in hotel speak usually meant you were looking at a bush. But I knew this hotel. The lowest tier rooms, the ones they gave to discount travel sites, did not look at the garden. They looked at the service entrance. They looked at the loading dock where the garbage trucks came at 5 in the morning. "This is unacceptable," Paige would scream. She would not care about the people staring. She never did. "Get me the manager. I demand the room we were promised." The manager would come out. He would be polite but firm. He would explain that the contract was with Bernard Jefferson. Bernard Jefferson had modified the contract. If they wanted to upgrade back to the suite, they would need to provide a credit card for the difference of $8,000 plus a nightly security deposit of $500. Tyrell would reach for his wallet instinctively. Then he would remember. The black metal card was dead. The Visa was dead. He was dead. He would look at Paige. Paige would look at him. And in that moment, the facade of their perfect marriage would crack just a little bit more. I took a sip of my tea. The ice clinked against the glass. I imagined them walking to their room. It would be a long walk. The standard rooms were in the back tower, furthest from the beach, furthest from the pools. They would walk down endless corridors, dragging their own luggage because they could not tip. They would open the door. The room would be clean, but small. 2 queen beds instead of a king. A view of a gray concrete wall and a row of green dumpsters. Paige would drop her bag on the floor. She would turn to Tyrell. Her face would be red. Her eyes would be full of hate. "You are useless," she would hiss. "You are absolutely useless. Your father is senile and you let him ruin everything. Why didn't you check the reservation? Why didn't you fix this?" Tyrell would stammer. "I didn't know, baby. He said he paid for everything. He must have clicked the wrong button online. He is old. He gets confused." "He is not confused, Tyrell," she would scream. "He is cheap. And you are weak. You told me you handled him. You told me you had control of the finances. We are stuck in Hawaii with no money in a room that smells like trash and we cannot even buy a drink. Fix it, Tyrell. Fix it now, or I swear to God I am leaving you." Tyrell would sit on the edge of the bed. He would put his head in his hands. For the first time in his life, he was facing a problem I was not going to solve. I remembered when he was 10 years old. He broke a neighbor's window with a baseball. He came running to me crying. I walked him over to the neighbor. I paid for the window. I apologized. I taught him to take responsibility, but I protected him from the anger. When he was 18 and got a speeding ticket, I paid the fine. When he was 25 and got fired from his first job, I paid his rent for 6 months so he would not have to move back home. I had crippled him. I had loved him so much I took away his ability to stand. I made him soft. And a soft man cannot handle a woman like Paige. He would be panicking now. His heart would be racing. He needed his daddy. My phone rang. It was Tyrell. I looked at the screen. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I picked it up, but I did not say hello. I stayed silent. "Dad. Dad, are you there?" Tyrell's voice was high-pitched, breathless. "Dad, something terrible happened. The hotel messed up. They canceled everything. We are in a tiny room. We have no food. Dad, you have to call them. You have to give them your card again. Please, Dad. Paige is going crazy." I listened to his desperation. It was the sound of a child who thinks the world owes him comfort. I cleared my throat. I made my voice sound weak, shaky. The voice of the frail old man they thought I was. "Who is this?" I asked. "It is Tyrell, Dad, your son. We are in Hawaii. Remember?" "Hawaii," I said slowly. "Oh, yes. That nice trip. Did you land safely?" "Yes, Dad." "We landed," Tyrell shouted. "But the reservation is wrong. You canceled the food. You canceled the suite. Why did you do that?" I paused. I let the silence stretch. "I did not cancel anything, son," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I just tried to help. The computer said save changes. I wanted to save money for you. You know how expensive things are. I thought I was helping." "You ruined it," Tyrell yelled. "You ruined everything. We have no money, Dad. Our cards are not working. We need you to wire us cash. Right now." $5,000. I sighed, a long, wheezing sigh. "I cannot do that, son," I said. "I lost my token. You know the little key for the bank. I cannot find it. I think the maid took it, or maybe I flushed it. I get so confused lately." Tyrell groaned. "Dad, find the token." "Look in your desk." "I cannot look right now," I said. "My legs hurt. I am going to take a nap. You two have fun. Take lots of pictures." "No." "Dad, do not hang up." Tyrell screamed. "Dad, listen to me." Bernard Jefferson does not listen to demands. I said, suddenly dropping the shaky act for just a second. I hung up the phone. I turned it off completely. I sat back in my chair. They were trapped. They were hungry. They were angry. They would have to spend the next 10 days staring at each other in a small room. No distractions, no spa treatments to hide behind, no expensive dinners to fill the silence. They would have to talk. And when they talked, They would realize that without my money, they had nothing in common. They hated each other. Paige loved the lifestyle I provided. Tyrell loved the validation Paige gave him. Take away the money and you have two strangers in a room overlooking a dumpster. I picked up the file Viola Strickland had sent over by courier an hour ago. It was the eviction notice. And the civil suit for theft. They thought the hotel room was a nightmare. They did not know that the real nightmare was waiting for them right here in Atlanta. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I needed to eat. I had a steak in the fridge, a nice thick ribeye. I was going to grill it on the patio. I was going to eat it slowly. And while I ate, I was going to think about my son eating vending machine crackers for dinner on his 10th anniversary. It was a cruel thought. But as I looked at the spot where my truck used to be parked, I decided that cruelty was just another word for justice when it is served cold. I seasoned the steak. I lit the grill. The fire flared up bright and hot. "Enjoy the view, Tyrell," I said to the flames. "Try not to look at the garbage. Look at your wife instead. It is the same thing." The morning sun did not bring warmth to the house on the hill. It brought exposure. Without the curtains, which I had ripped down myself the night before, the light flooded into every corner, revealing the dust motes dancing in the air. I stood in the center of the living room holding a clipboard. At 8 o'clock sharp, the rumble of a diesel engine shook the driveway. It was Mike and his crew. They backed a 30-foot moving truck right up to the front portico. I opened the front door. Mike stepped out wearing his work gloves and a look of confusion. "Bernard," he said, looking past me into the house. "You were serious. You want it all gone. Every thread, Mike," I said. "If it is not nailed down, it goes on the truck. If it is nailed down, pry it up." I had called an auction house in Buckhead late last night. They specialized in estate liquidations. Usually they handled the assets of the dead. Today they were handling the assets of the ungrateful. The appraiser, Mr. Henderson, arrived 5 minutes after Mike. He was a small man with glasses and a calculator. I walked him through the house. I pointed to the Persian rug in the foyer. $12,000, I said. Silk and wool. Hand nodded. Henderson nodded and scribbled on his pad. "Lovely piece. We can start the bidding at 4. "Sold," I said. We moved to the dining room. The mahogany table seated 12. It had never hosted a family dinner. Just Tyrell, his pretentious friends, and Paige, his networking parties. 8,000, I said. Custom made. Henderson ran his hand over the finish. Pristine condition. 3,000 opening bid. Sold, I said. It went on like this for hours. The Steinway piano no one knew how to play. The abstract sculptures, Paige said, spoke to her soul. The crystal vases. The imported lamps. I watched as Micah's crew wrapped them in moving blankets and marched them out the door. It was a funeral procession for a lifestyle my son could never afford. The house began to echo. With every piece of furniture removed, the acoustics changed. The sound of boots on hardwood became louder. The voice of the appraiser became sharper. It sounded like a construction site again. It sounded like potential. I walked up the stairs to the master suite. This was Paige's territory. It smelled of lavender and deception. I opened the walk-in closet. It was the size of a small bedroom. Rows of designer dresses hung on velvet hangers. Shelves of shoes lined the walls. Handbags that cost more than my first work truck sat on lighted displays. Mr. Henderson whistled from the doorway. "Now this is a collection, Mr. Jefferson. We have a specialized buyer for luxury goods. Vintage Chanel, Hermes. This will fetch a premium. Take it all," I said. "Leave nothing but the hangers." While the crew began boxing up the shoes, I walked to the back of the closet. There was a shelf high up near the ceiling stacked with hat boxes. Paige did not wear hats. I pulled down the top box. It was heavy. Too heavy for a hat. I removed the lid. It was not a hat. It was a stash. Inside were bundles of cash. Rubber-banded stacks of $100 bills. I counted one stack. $5,000. There were 10 stacks. $50,000 in cash. This was the money she had siphoned. This was the money she had stolen from the transfers I sent. She was hoarding it. She was building an escape fund or maybe just a war chest. Under the cash there was a leather-bound notebook. I opened it. Paige's handwriting was neat and sharp. It was a ledger, but not a business ledger. It was a diary of theft. January 4th, transfer from joint account, $4,000. Told Tyrell it was for tax prep. February 12th, cash withdrawal, $2,000. Tyrell didn't notice. March 20th, sold the diamond bracelet Bernard gave me for Christmas, $8,000. Deposited in secret account. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest. She was documenting her crimes. She was proud of them. I flipped to the back of the notebook. There were loose papers tucked into the pocket. I pulled them out. They were emails. Printed out emails between Paige and a man named Caleb. He is getting suspicious, Caleb wrote. The old man asked about the car payments. Do not worry, Paige replied. We are accelerating the timeline. Tyrell is on board with the nursing home plan. Once we get back from Hawaii, we are filing the competency papers. We will have power of attorney by next month. Then we control everything. The house. The accounts. The old man will be medicated and out of the way. Just make sure you get the signature on the trust modification, Caleb wrote back. We need access to the principal, not just the interest. I have been practicing his signature, Paige wrote. I can do it with my eyes closed. He shakes when he writes anyway. It will be easy to fake. I closed the notebook. I put the papers back inside. I put the cash back in the box. I handed the box to Mike, who was standing by the door waiting for instructions. Put this in the cab of my truck, Mike, I said. Do not put it with the auction items. This is evidence. Mike looked at my face. He saw something there that made him nod without asking questions. He took the box and left. By 3 p.m, the house was empty. It was a shell. The floors were bare. The walls were bare. The windows were naked. The only thing left was the echo of my breathing. I walked through the rooms one last time. It looked huge. Without the clutter of their greed, you could see the good bones of the house. You could see the craftsmanship. I stopped in the kitchen. The refrigerator was gone. The stove was gone. Even the built-in microwave had been removed. I had sold the appliances to a used restaurant supply dealer. I took a marker from my pocket. I wrote on the wall where the refrigerator used to be. Bank of Dad is closed. I walked to the front door. The locksmith was waiting there. He was installing the new system. It was not a key lock. It was a biometric scanner, high security, commercial grade. Is it done? I asked. Yes, sir, the locksmith said. Fingerprint access only. I programmed your print as the master admin. No one gets in without your finger or a remote unlock from your phone. I tested it. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy mechanical thud. It sounded like a prison door closing, but this time the prisoners were on the outside. I paid the locksmith and sent him away. I went out to my truck and pulled out a folding camping chair. I brought it into the empty living room. I set it up in the center of the floor facing the front door. I had a bottle of water and a sandwich I had bought at a gas station. I sat down. The house was dark now. The sun had gone down. I did not turn on the lights. I did not want them to see me when they arrived. I wanted them to try the door first. I checked my phone. I had a notification from the airline app. Their return flight had landed in Atlanta an hour ago. They would be here soon. They would be tired. They would be hungry. They would be angry about the hotel. They would be expecting to walk into their home, crash onto their leather sofa, and order takeout. Instead, they were going to walk into a fortress. I took a bite of my sandwich. It was dry, but I chewed it slowly. I thought about the cash in the hat box. $50,000. That was a felony amount. That was grand larceny. And the emails proving conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery. That was prison time. They thought they were playing a game. They thought they were clever. But they forgot one thing. I built this game. I wrote the rules. And I owned the board. A car pulled into the driveway. Headlights swept across the front window, illuminating the empty space for a brief second. I heard car doors slam. I heard the rolling of suitcase wheels on the concrete. I heard Paige's voice shrill and complaining. I cannot believe we had to fly Coach back, she was saying. My back is killing me, and the food was disgusting. I am going to take a 3-hour bath. I heard Tyrell grunt. Just open the door, Paige. I need a drink. I sat perfectly still in the dark. I heard the sound of a key sliding into the lock, or trying to. Clink, clink, scratch. What is wrong with the lock? Paige asked. I do not know, Tyrell said. The key won't go in. Let me try. Paige snapped. More scratching, more clinking. It is jammed, she said. Or someone changed it. Tyrell, did you change the locks and forget to tell me? No, why would I change the locks? Tyrell said, his voice rising in panic. Maybe it is broken. I heard Tyrell pounding on the door. Mom, Dad, are you in there? Open the door. The key is not working. I did not move. I did not speak. Then I heard a gasp from Paige. Tyrell, look, she said. Her voice was trembling. Look at the doormat. I knew what was there. I had placed it myself right before I sat down. It was a large cardboard box. It was taped shut. Written on the top in thick black marker were the words, "For the happy couple." Open it, Paige whispered. I heard the sound of packing tape being ripped. Then silence. A long, heavy silence. Then a scream. It was not a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated rage and horror. It was Paige. "What is this?" she shrieked. "What did he do?" I stood up from my camping chair. I walked silently to the door. I placed my hand on the cool metal. I could feel their vibrations on the other side. I imagined them looking into the box. Inside was a pile of fabric scraps. It used to be Tyrell's designer suits and Paige's couture dresses. I had taken a pair of heavy-duty construction shears to every single garment they owned. I had shredded them into ribbons, and resting on top of the pile of rags was a white envelope. Inside was a letter from Viola Strickland. It was a notice to vacate, a restraining order, and a copy of the revocable trust triggering the immediate transfer of all property rights back to Bernard Jefferson. I leaned close to the door. "Welcome home, children," I whispered. I pressed my thumb against the scanner on the inside. The lock beeped. I threw the door open. They were standing there on the porch, illuminated by the porch light. Tyrell was holding a handful of shredded silk. Paige was holding the letter, her mouth open in a silent scream. They looked up at me. I was wearing my old work clothes, my boots, my jeans, a flannel shirt. I looked like the man who built this house, and behind me they could see past my shoulder into the foyer. They could see the empty space, they could see the bare floors. They could see that their life, their possessions, their comfort had vanished into thin air. Tyrell dropped the rags. "Dad," he whispered. "What happened? Where is our stuff?" I smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Your stuff?" I asked. "I do not see any of your stuff. I only see my house, and you two are trespassing." Paige lunged at me. "You old bastard," she screamed, reaching for my face. I did not flinch. I did not move. But I knew that the security camera I had installed above the door frame was capturing every frame of her assault, and that was exactly what I needed for the next step. I sat in the darkness of the empty foyer on the folding camping chair I had retrieved from my truck. The only light came from the street lamps filtering through the bare windows, casting long, skeletal shadows across the hardwood floors I had installed 20 years ago. My watch read 11:30 at night. They were late. I knew why they were late. They did not have the money for a direct Uber from the airport. They probably had to take the MARTA train as far as it went and then wait for a discount rideshare to carry them the rest of the way. I closed my eyes and pictured their last 3 days. I had tracked the declined transactions on the canceled cards, so I knew the story. They had tried to check into the Grand Wailea and failed. They had tried to rent a car and failed. They had ended up at a budget motel 3 miles from the beach, the kind of place where the air conditioner rattles and the sheets smell of cigarette smoke. They had eaten instant noodles and gas station sandwiches because that was all their cash could cover. Paige, who refused to drink anything but filtered spring water, had been drinking from a tap. Tyrell, who prided himself on his tailored suits, had been sweating in the same clothes for 72 hours. The sound of a car engine broke the silence. It was a rough, idling engine, not the smooth purr of the town cars they usually hired. I stood up slowly and walked to the side window. I peered through the blinds. A beat-up gray sedan sat at the curb. The trunk popped open. The driver did not get out to help. Tyrell climbed out of the back seat. He looked like a ghost. His shirt was stained. His face was unshaven. He dragged the heavy Louis Vuitton suitcases out of the trunk himself, his movements sluggish and defeated. Paige stepped out onto the sidewalk. She was wearing sunglasses even though it was nearly midnight. She was holding her high heels in her hand, walking barefoot on the concrete. She looked small. She looked angry. I moved to the spot near the front door where I could see them, but they could not see me. I placed my hand on the cool biometric lock I had installed just yesterday. It was solid, unyielding, just like I had to be. They dragged their luggage up the driveway. The wheels clicked rhythmically against the pavers. I heard them arguing before they even reached the steps. "I cannot believe we had to borrow money from your college roommate," Paige hissed. "It is humiliating, Tyrell." He laughed at us. He asked if we were homeless. "We will pay him back as soon as we get inside," Tyrell muttered. His voice was hoarse. "Dad just forgot to pay the bills. He is old, Paige. His mind is going. Once we get inside, I will find his checkbook and fix this." "Fix this," Paige scoffed. "You cannot even fix your own tie. I need a shower. I feel disgusting. I want to burn these clothes." They reached the front porch. I held my breath. This was the moment. Tyrell dropped the suitcase handles. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his key ring. He selected the brass key that had opened this front door for 15 years. He slid it into the lock cylinder. Or rather, he tried to. The key stopped halfway. It hit the new mechanism. Tyrell frowned. He pulled it out and tried again. He jiggled it. He pushed harder. "What are you doing?" Paige snapped. "Open the door." "It is stuck," Tyrell said. He leaned closer, squinting in the dim porch light. "It does not fit. Let me do it." Paige pushed him aside. She grabbed the key. She jammed it in with violent force. Metal scraped against metal. "It is not working. Why is it not working?" She looked at the door properly for the first time. She saw the sleek black panel above the handle, the fingerprint scanner, the keypad. "What is this?" she asked, her voice rising in pitch. "Since when do we have a smart lock?" "I do not know," Tyrell said. "Dad must have had it installed. Maybe he thought it would help him remember." "Try the code. Use his birthday." Paige punched numbers into the keypad. Beep, beep, beep. A red light flashed. A low electronic tone signaled failure. Access denied. She tried again. She tried my birthday. She tried Tyrella's birthday. She tried the date of their wedding. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. The red light blinked, mocking them in the darkness. "Open the damn door," Paige screamed. She kicked the wood. The solid oak did not budge. She hammered on it with her fists. "Bernard, open up. We know you are in there. Open this door right now." Silence answered her. I stood 3 feet away on the other side, breathing shallowly, listening to her panic rise. "Maybe he is not home," Tyrell said. "Maybe he is at the hospital. Maybe something happened." "I hope he is dead," Paige shrieked. "I hope he is dead in there so I can step over his body and take a bath." Her words hung in the humid night air. They were heavy with hatred. Tyrell did not correct her. He did not defend me. He just jiggled the handle again uselessly. "Hey, keep it down," a voice called out from the street. It was Mrs. Higgins from across the road. She was standing on her porch in her bathrobe holding her little dog. She was the neighborhood watch captain. She saw everything. "Mind your own business, you old hag," Paige yelled back, turning around. "We live here," Tyrell added, trying to sound authoritative but failing. "We are just locked out." "You do not look like you live here," Mrs. Higgins called back. "You look like vagrants. Stop that racket or I am calling the cops." Paige let out a guttural scream of frustration. She spun back toward the door and tripped. Her bare foot caught on something sitting in the shadows of the porch corner. She stumbled and fell to her knees, scraping her skin on the rough brick. "Ouch!" she cried out. "What the hell is this?" She looked down. It was a large cardboard box taped shut with heavy duct tape. I had placed it there an hour ago. It was the only welcome gift I had prepared. Tyrell stepped forward. "What is it?" "It is a box," Paige said, rubbing her knee. "It says, 'For Tyrell and Paige.' It is from your father." "Open it," Tyrell said. "Maybe the new keys are inside. Maybe he left us a note explaining this mess." Paige clawed at the tape. Her fingernails, usually perfectly manicured, were chipped and broken from the trip. She ripped the cardboard open. She reached inside. I heard the sound of her breath hitching. She pulled out a handful of fabric. It was dark blue silk. It looked like a rag. "This is my dress," she whispered. "This is my Valentino gown." She pulled out more. A sleeve from Tyrell's Armani suit, a leg from his designer jeans, a shred of her cashmere sweater. The box was filled with the mutilated remains of their wardrobe. I had spent 4 hours the previous night with my heavy-duty construction shears. I had cut every seam. I had slashed every zipper. I had turned $50,000 worth of clothing into cleaning rags. Paige stood up holding the shredded dress against her chest. She began to scream. It was not a scream of anger anymore. It was a scream of pure horror. It was the sound of someone realizing their identity had been destroyed. "He cut them," she wailed. "He cut all our clothes. He is crazy. He is absolutely insane." Tyrell dug into the box frantically. He pulled out his favorite blazer. The back was sliced open. He pulled out his Italian loafers. I had driven a nail through the sole of each one. "Dad," Tyrell shouted at the closed door. "Dad, what did you do? Are you sick? Do you not know who we are?" He dropped the ruined clothes. At the bottom of the box, sitting on top of the pile of scraps, was a thick white envelope. It bore the seal of the Strickland law firm. Tyrell tore it open. He pulled out the documents. He moved under the porch light to read them. I watched through the peephole. I saw his eyes scanning the pages. I saw the color drain from his face until he looked like gray ash. "What does it say?" Paige demanded, wiping tears from her face. "It is a legal notice," Tyrell said. His voice was trembling so hard the paper shook. "It is a notice of eviction and a restraining order." "Eviction," Paige spat. "He cannot evict us. We own this house. Your name is on the deed, Tyrell. We signed the papers." Tyrell flipped to the second page. He read the bold text. "It says the deed was held in a revocable living trust," Tyrell read. "It says the primary trustee, Bernard Jefferson, has exercised his right to revoke the beneficiary status due to violation of the morality clause." "Morality clause?" Paige screamed. "What morality clause?" Tyrell looked up at the door. He looked right at the peephole as if he could feel my eyes on him. "It says we stole from him," Tyrell whispered. "It says we engaged in financial abuse of an elder. It says the transfer of ownership is null and void immediately. It says we have zero equity." He dropped the paper. It fluttered down onto the pile of shredded clothes. "He stole our house!" Paige yelled. "That old bastard stole our house!" Tyrell's face changed. The shock was replaced by a sudden surge of arrogance. The arrogance of a man who thinks he knows the system because he watched a few legal dramas on TV. "No," he said, straightening up. "No, he cannot do this. You cannot just kick people out. There are tenant laws. We have rights. We have established residency. This is illegal lockout." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen was cracked from when he dropped it at the airport. "What are you doing?" Paige asked. "I am calling the police," Tyrell said. "I am calling the cops, and I am going to have my father arrested. He destroyed our property. He locked us out of our own home. He is going to jail tonight." I stood on the other side of the door and smiled. "Go ahead, son," I whispered. "Call them." He dialed 911. "I need police at 4500 Pine Valley Road," he said into the phone. "My father has gone crazy. He destroyed our property and he has barricaded himself inside our house. We are in danger." "Yes, send a squad car." He hung up and looked at Paige. "Do not worry, baby," he said, puffing out his chest. "The police will break the door down. We will be sleeping in our bed tonight. And Dad is going to be sleeping in a cell. Then we will have him committed. This proves he is dangerous. This is exactly what we needed to get power of attorney." Paige wiped her face and smiled a cruel, twisted smile. "You are right. He just handed us everything on a silver platter." They stood there on the porch amidst the ruins of their clothes, waiting for the sirens. They thought they had won. They thought the law was a tool they could use to bludgeon me. I walked back to the living room. I picked up the folder I had prepared for this exact moment. It contained the original trust documents, the bank statements showing the theft, the receipts for the clothes I had destroyed proving I had paid for every single thread. And most importantly, it contained the deed, the real deed, the one that showed that Tyrell Jefferson was never an owner. He was a tenant at will, a guest. I poured myself a fresh glass of water. I heard the sirens in the distance growing louder. They were coming to save Tyrell, or so he thought. He did not know that when you call the police to a house you do not own to report a crime you committed, you are not the victim. You are the suspect. I checked my appearance in the hall mirror. I looked calm. I looked sane. I looked like a man who was about to teach a very painful lesson in property law. I waited for the knock. The blue lights of the police cruiser swept across the front lawn, illuminating the empty windows of my house like a strobe light in a horror movie. I stood in the foyer, watching the shadows dance on the bare walls. I adjusted my tie. I had changed out of my work clothes while they waited outside. I put on my best Sunday suit, a charcoal gray three-piece suit I usually saved for church or funerals. Tonight felt like a little bit of both. I heard car doors slam. I heard the crackle of a police radio. "He is in there, officer," I heard Paige scream. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. "He has a weapon. He destroyed everything. He is having a psychotic break. You have to break the door down before he hurts himself or burns the place down." I walked to the door. I did not run. I checked my reflection in the glass panel one last time. I looked like a man in control. I looked like the owner. I disengaged the deadbolt. The electronic lock chirped. I opened the heavy oak door. 2 police officers stood on my porch, hands resting near their holsters. They were young white men. They looked tense. Behind them, Tyrell and Paige were huddled together, looking like shipwreck survivors. Officer Miller, the older of the 2, stepped forward. "Sir, step out onto the porch with your hands visible. We received a call about a disturbance." I stepped out. I moved slowly and deliberately. I held my hands open at waist level. "Good evening, officers," I said. My voice was calm, deep and steady. It was the voice I used to command 50 men on a job site. "I am Bernard Jefferson. I am the homeowner. I apologize for the noise. My guests are having a difficult time accepting that their visit has ended." "Guests," Tyrell shouted. He pushed past the junior officer. "We are not guests. We live here. This is my house. My name is on the deed. He locked us out illegally. He destroyed our clothes. Look at the box. Look at it." He pointed frantically at the box of shredded fabric. Officer Miller looked at the box, then back at me. "Sir, is this true? Did you destroy their property?" I looked at the officer. I did not look at my son. "Officer, those items were purchased with my credit card," I said. "I have the receipts right here. In the state of Georgia, property purchased by an individual belongs to that individual until gifted. I never gifted these items. I simply disposed of my own property." I handed a thin folder to the officer. Inside were the receipts for the suits, the dresses, the shoes. Every single item matched to a transaction on my American Express statement. Officer Miller glanced at the papers. He frowned. "Okay, that is a civil matter. But the lockout is different. If they have established residency, you cannot just kick them out without a court order. You have to go through the eviction process. It takes 30 days. Tyrell smiled. It was an ugly, triumphant smile. "See, Dad, you do not know the law. You cannot touch us. Officer, make him let us in, and then arrest him for vandalism." Paige chimed in, her eyes wild. "And elder abuse. He is clearly senile. He is a danger to himself. He needs to be taken for a psychiatric evaluation." I reached into my inside jacket pocket. The junior officer tensed his hand, dropping to his gun. "Easy, son," I said. "Just getting some paperwork." I pulled out the document Viola Strickland had prepared. It was bound in a blue legal cover. It was the most beautiful piece of paper I had ever held. "Officer," I said, handing it to Miller, "I think there has been a misunderstanding regarding the ownership of this property. My son is under the impression that he owns this house. He is mistaken." Officer Miller opened the document. He shone his flashlight on the pages. "What is this?" he asked. "That is the Jefferson Family Revocable Trust," I said. "I established it 10 years ago. I am the grantor and the sole trustee. The property at 4500 Pine Valley Road is the primary asset of the trust." Tyrell stepped closer, trying to read over the officer's shoulder. "That is a lie," he stammered. "I signed the deed. 2 years ago. We went to the lawyer. You put my name on it." I turned to my son. I looked him in the eye. "You signed a transfer document, Tyrell," I said. "You signed a document transferring the title from me personally to the trust. You didn't read it, did you? You just saw your name listed as a beneficiary and you signed." Tyrell turned pale. "Beneficiary?" "Yes," I said. "A beneficiary has no ownership rights while the grantor is alive. You are not an owner, Tyrell. You never were. You were a guest, a tenant at will, living here by my grace and my permission." Officer Miller flipped to the back page. He read the highlighted section. "And this clause here?" he asked, tapping the paper. "Clause 13, I said. The Morality and Conduct Clause. It states that any beneficiary who engages in theft, fraud, or abuse against the grantor immediately forfeits all rights to the trust and any residency privileges granted by the trustee." I pulled out the second packet of evidence, the bank statements showing the money Paige siphoned, the credit card statement showing the unauthorized charge for the nursing home deposit. "They stole from me, officer," I said. "They committed fraud." Therefore, under the terms of the trust which controls this property, their right to be here has been revoked effective immediately. Officer Miller looked at the documents. He looked at the bank statements. He was not a judge, but he knew a solid contract when he saw one. He looked at Tyrell. "Son, is this your signature on the trust agreement?" he asked, pointing to the bottom of the page. Tyrell squinted. "Yes, but I thought—" "It does not matter what you thought," the officer said, closing the folder. "You signed it. This document says you are a guest, and the owner has revoked your invitation." "No," Paige screamed. She lunged at the officer, grabbing his arm. "You do not understand. This is a trick. He is lying. We have nowhere to go. You cannot throw us out on the street in the middle of the night." Officer Miller pulled his arm away gently but firmly. Step back." He turned to me. "Mr. Jefferson, technically you should still give notice." I handed him the final paper. "It was a trespass warning. They have been given notice," I said. "They were notified via courier 4 hours ago. They are now trespassing on private property. I want them removed." The officer sighed. He looked at Tyrell and Paige. He saw the shredded clothes. He saw the desperation, but he also saw the law. "Folks," he said, "you need to leave." What? Tyrell gasped. "You are taking his side. He is crazy." "I am not taking sides," the officer said. "I am enforcing the law. The deed belongs to the trust. Mr. Jefferson controls the trust. You have no lease. You have no ownership. You are trespassing. You need to gather your things and vacate the premises." "We do not have any things," Paige wailed, pointing at the box. "He destroyed everything." "Then you should have no trouble leaving quickly," I said. Officer Miller looked at me. There was a flicker of respect in his eyes. He realized what I had done. I had checkmated them. "Mr. Jefferson, do you want to press charges for trespassing?" he asked. "Not if they leave right now," I said. "But if they step 1 foot on this driveway again, I will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law." Tyrell looked at me. His eyes were wide with shock. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. "Dad," he whispered, "you cannot do this. Where are we going to go? We have no money. Our cards are blocked." I checked my watch. "It is midnight, Tyrell," I said. "I suggest you start walking. There is a motel about 3 miles down the road. Maybe they take cash. If you have any left." Tyrell's face crumpled. He looked at the house, the dark windows, the empty shell that used to be his safety net. "You planned this," he said. "You planned this whole thing, the vacation, the airport, all of it." I leaned in close so only he could hear me. "You planned to put me in Shady Pines, Tyrell. You planned to sell my house while I was still breathing. I just rewrote the ending." Paige grabbed Tyrell's arm. "Come on," she hissed. "Let is go. He is a monster. We will get a lawyer. We will sue him for everything he has." I laughed. "Good luck with that, Paige. You can use the money you sent to your cousin to pay the retainer." "Oh, wait. I froze that account too." Paige froze. Her eyes went wide. She knew. She knew that I knew. She did not say another word. She grabbed the handle of her suitcase and began to drag it down the driveway. Her bare feet slapped against the asphalt. Tyrell stood there for a moment longer. He looked at me. He looked for the father who had fixed his windows and paid his fines. He did not find him. He found Bernard Jefferson, the man who survived segregation, the man who built a business from dirt, the man who did not tolerate thieves. "Goodbye, son," I said. Tyrell turned around. He picked up his suitcase. He walked into the darkness after his wife. I stood on the porch and watched them go. The police officers got back in their car. They waited until Tyrell and Paige turned the corner at the end of the street before they drove away. I was alone. The street was quiet. The crickets were chirping. The air smelled of rain. I turned around and walked back into my empty house. I closed the door. I locked it. I went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. It was empty except for a bottle of water. I sat on the floor because I had sold the chairs. I took a drink of water. It tasted sweet. I had done it. I had cut the limb to save the tree, but the night was not over. Tyrell and Paige were out there in the dark. They were angry. They were desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the security system I had installed. Motion detected at rear perimeter. I smiled. They were not going to the motel. They were trying to sneak back in. They thought they could break a window or find an unlocked door. They forgot that I built this house. I knew every entry point, and I had secured them all. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. I saw two grainy figures creeping around the back patio. I did not call the police again. Not yet. I pressed a button on my phone. The sprinklers turned on. I watched on the screen as the high-pressure jets of cold water blasted them. I watched them slip and fall in the mud. I watched them scramble over the back fence, soaking wet and defeated. I laughed until my sides hurt. "Go to the motel, Tyrell," I said to the screen. "Go to the motel and think about what you did." Tomorrow, I was going to finish them. Tomorrow, I was going to reveal the final secret. The one about the cousin. The one that would turn them against each other for good. But for now, I was just going to sit here in my castle and enjoy the silence. The neon sign of the Blue Ridge Motel buzzed with a sound like an angry hornet. It was the only light on a stretch of highway that most people in Atlanta pretended did not exist. I knew the place well. Not because I stayed there, but because I had fired men who spent their paychecks there on things they should not have. It was a place for people who had run out of options. And that is exactly where my son and his wife found themselves at 1 a.m. I sat in my empty living room tracking the GPS signal on Tyrella's phone. I had not cut that service yet. I wanted to know exactly where they landed. The blue dot stopped blinking right over the motel parking lot. I poured a glass of water and leaned back. I did not need a camera to know what was happening inside room 104. I knew human nature. And I knew that when you strip away the luxury, the comfort, and the easy money, the beast underneath comes out to feed. Tyrell pushed the door open. It stuck on the shag carpet that smelled of stale smoke and mildew. He stumbled inside, dropping the heavy suitcase that now contained nothing but air and humiliation. He was soaking wet from my sprinklers. His expensive haircut was plastered to his skull. His shivering was not just from the cold water. It was from shock. Paige followed him in. She did not look at the room. She did not look at the peeling wallpaper or the stains on the bedspread. She looked at Tyrell. And in that moment, the mask she had worn for 10 years finally dissolved. She did not cry. She did not ask if he was okay. She threw her purse on the bed and turned on him like a viper. "You are pathetic," she hissed. Tyrell looked up, blinking water from his eyes. "Paige, please, I am trying. Paige laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound that bounced off the thin walls. "You call this trying? We are in a roach motel, Tyrell. We are wet. We have no clothes. We have no house. And it is all because you are a weak, spineless little boy who could not handle one old man." Tyrell flinched as if she had slapped him. "I did not know he would do this, Paige. He tricked us. He is my father. I thought he loved me." "He does not love you," she screamed. "He pities you. And honestly, right now I pity you too. Look at you. You are 38 years old, and you do not have a pot to piss in that he did not buy for you. You are nothing without him." Tyrell sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. The springs groaned. "But we are a team, Paige. We will figure this out. We will sue him. We will get the house back." Paige walked over to the mirror. She looked at her reflection. Her makeup was running. Her hair was a mess. She wiped her face aggressively. "There is no we, Tyrell," she said to her reflection. "There is me, and then there is the anchor I have been dragging around my neck for a decade. I married you because I thought you were the heir to a kingdom. I did not know I was marrying the court jester." Tyrell stood up, his face flushed. "Hey, I gave you everything. The cars, the jewelry, the trips. You gave me nothing," she spat, turning to face him. "Bernard gave me those things. You just signed the receipts with a hand that shook every time you swiped the card. You are a fraud, Tyrell. You played the big man around town, but you were just spending your daddy allowance. And now the allowance is gone. So tell me, Tyrell, what exactly do you bring to the table now?" Tyrell opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at his hands. For the first time, he was seeing himself through her eyes, and he did not like the view. He realized then that she had never looked at him with love. She had looked at him with hunger. And now that the food was gone, she was looking at him with starvation and contempt. Just then, his phone pinged. It was a loud, cheerful sound that cut through the tension in the room. Tyrell reached into his wet pocket. He pulled out the phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. It was an email notification. From the bank. I smiled in my living room. I had timed this perfectly. I had initiated the chargebacks 3 hours ago, knowing the automated system would send the alerts right about now. Tyrell squinted at the screen. He swiped to open the email. His eyes went wide. His jaw dropped. He made a sound like he had been punched in the gut. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh God, no." "What is it?" Paige asked. Her voice was bored. "Did your daddy cancel your Netflix subscription too?" Tyrell held up the phone. His hand was shaking violently. "He reported the charges as fraud," he said. His voice was barely a squeak. "He called American Express and the bank. He filed affidavits claiming his cards were stolen and used without authorization. So what Paige said, let him play his games." "You do not understand," Tyrell said. "He initiated a chargeback on everything from the last 90 days. The engagement ring upgrade I bought you, the deposit for the nursing home, the first-class tickets, the vintage Rolex I bought myself for my birthday." Paige froze. "What does that mean?" "It means the bank took the money back." Tyrell screamed. He threw the phone on the bed. "It means they reversed the payments to the merchants. And since the joint account is empty, the bank is coming after the secondary account holder for the overdraft." He looked at her with wild eyes. "I am the secondary account holder, Paige. The debt just rolled over to me personally." He picked up the phone again and scrolled. $50,000, he read. Negative $50,000. "Immediate payment required or they will garnish wages and seize assets." He looked up at her. "I owe the bank $50,000 right now, and I do not have 50 cents. Paige stared at him. She did not offer to help. She did not hug him. She did not say they would work extra shifts to pay it off. She started laughing. It was a low, dark laugh. "You are ruined," she said. "You are actually financially ruined. Your credit score is going to 0. You will never get a loan again. You cannot even rent an apartment with a judgment like that." Tyrell looked at her pleadingly. "Paige, you have money. The consulting business. You said you had savings. You have to help me. We can pay this off." Paige stopped laughing. Her face went blank. "I do not have any money, Tyrell. The business is slow. The market is down." "That is a lie," Tyrell said. "I saw the transfers. Dad sent $4,000 a month to your business account. Where is it?" "It is gone," she said coldly. "Overhead. Expenses. It costs money to look this good, Tyrell." She was lying. I knew she was lying. Tyrell knew she was lying, but he was too weak to challenge her. He was too broken. He sat back down on the bed and put his head in his hands. He began to weep, great heaving sobs of a man who has lost his dignity, his home, and his future in the span of 6 hours. I watched the dot on the map. It hadn't moved. But then I noticed something else in the mental image I had constructed. Something subtle. While Tyrell was crying, Paige did not go to him. She did not comfort him. She walked to the corner of the room near the bathroom door. She turned her back to him. She reached into her bra and pulled out her phone. She had hidden it there to keep it dry. She shielded the screen with her body. She began to type. Tyrell looked up through his tears. He saw her silhouette in the dim light of the bathroom. He saw the glow of the screen illuminating her face. She was smiling. It was a small secret smile. A smile of intimacy. The kind of smile she used to give him when they first started dating. "Who are you texting?" Tyrell asked. His voice was thick with mucus and tears. Paige jumped. She quickly lowered the phone. She turned around her face, composing itself into a mask of annoyance. "Nobody," she said. "Just my mother. I am telling her we are safe." She was worried. Tyrell narrowed his eyes. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. At 1 a.m, he asked, "Your mother goes to sleep at 9. She woke up. Paige snapped. She sensed something was wrong. Mothers have intuition, Tyrell. Unlike your father, who is just a psychopath. She walked past him and went into the bathroom. She slammed the door and locked it. Tyrell sat there staring at the closed door. For the first time in 10 years, the fog of adoration was lifting. He remembered the withdrawals. He remembered the business trips she took alone. He remembered the long phone calls she took on the balcony. He remembered the cousin she sent money to, the cousin she visited in Miami, the cousin I had told him about in the audit but he had refused to believe. He stood up. He walked to the bathroom door. He pressed his ear against the wood. He could hear her voice, low, urgent. "Baby, it is a disaster," she was whispering. The old man went nuclear. "Yes, he cut everything. No, I have the cash. It is safe. Do not worry. I just need to get away from him. He is a mess. I will take an Uber in the morning. Yes. I miss you too." Tyrell stepped back from the door. His face was pale. His hands were fists. He looked at the suitcase. He looked at the empty room. He realized then that he was not just broke. He was alone. He had betrayed the only person who ever truly loved him, his father, for a woman who was currently planning her escape with another man. I sat in my chair and took a deep breath. The seed was planted. Tyrell was not smart, but he was jealous. And jealousy is a powerful motivator. He would not sleep tonight. He would sit on that lumpy mattress and listen to the woman he destroyed his life for whisper sweet nothings to a ghost. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the garbage cans in the motel parking lot, Tyrell Jefferson was going to want answers. And I was going to give them to him. I picked up the file on Caleb Thorne. I picked up the photos my private investigator had taken. Photos of Paige and Caleb at dinner. Photos of them entering an apartment complex. Photos that left no room for doubt. I put the file in my bag. Tomorrow I would buy my son lunch. A cheap lunch. And for dessert, I would serve him the truth. I turned off the iPad. "Sleep tight, son," I said to the empty room. "The nightmare is almost over. Or maybe it is just starting." The bell above the door of Big Ed's diner chimed with a rusty sound that matched the smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease hanging in the air. I sat in the corner booth, the same booth where I used to sit every Saturday morning 40 years ago before heading to a job site. Back then I was young and hungry. Now I was old and full of a cold, hard truth. I watched the door. Tyrell walked in. He did not look like the man who had boarded a first-class flight to Hawaii 10 days ago. He looked like a man who had lost a fight with a hurricane. His designer shirt was wrinkled and stained with sweat. His face was covered in a patchy stubble. His eyes were red-rimmed and darting around the room as if he expected the police or a debt collector to jump out from behind the counter. He spotted me and rushed over. He slid into the booth opposite me. The vinyl seat squeaked under his weight. "Dad," he breathed out. "Thank God. I knew you would come. I knew you would not leave me hanging." He reached for the menu, his hands shaking. "I am starving, Dad. Can I get the lumberjack special? And coffee, lots of coffee." I looked at the waitress, a woman named Darlene, who had been working here since I was pouring concrete for the city. "Just coffee, Darlene," I said. "Black." Tyrell looked at me, his face falling. "Dad, please. I haven't eaten a real meal in 2 days." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You are not here to eat, Tyrell," I said. "You are here to listen. And listening is better on an empty stomach. It keeps you sharp." Tyrell slumped. "Okay, Dad. Okay. Listen, I know you are mad. I know I messed up. But Paige and I, we can fix this. We just need a bridge loan, just $10,000, to get an apartment, to get new clothes. I can get a job. I will pay you back." I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Pay me back?" I asked. "With what? With the money you stole from me? Or with the money you helped your wife steal?" Tyrell stiffened. "I didn't steal anything. Paige manages the finances. She said we were investing. She said the nursing home deposit was just a reservation fee in case you needed it later. She loves you, Dad. She was trying to protect you." He still believed it, even after the eviction, even after the shredded clothes. He still clung to the lie because the lie was the only thing holding his fragile ego together. I reached into my leather bag. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. It hit the table with a heavy thud. "Open it," I said. Tyrell looked at the envelope. "What is this?" "Legal papers. Another lawsuit." "It is an education, son," I said. "It is the lesson I should have taught you 20 years ago instead of buying you a car. Open it." Tyrell undid the clasp. He reached inside and pulled out a stack of photographs. They were high-resolution prints taken with a telephoto lens. My private investigator was worth every penny. Tyrell looked at the first photo. It showed Paige. She was sitting at an outdoor cafe in Miami. She was wearing a white sundress I had paid for. She was laughing, her head thrown back. Across from her, holding her hand, was a man. He was white, blonde, muscular. He looks like he spent his life in a gym. "That is Caleb," Tyrell said. His voice wavered. "That is her cousin. From Florida. She goes to visit him to help with his sick mother." "Keep looking," I said. Tyrell flipped to the next photo. Paige and Caleb were walking on the beach. His arm was around her waist. Her hand was in his back pocket. "Cousins are close, Dad," Tyrell said, but his face was turning gray. "They grew up together." "Next one," I commanded. The third photo was taken inside a car. a convertible BMW. Caleb was driving. Paige was leaning over the center console. She was kissing him. It was not a peck on the cheek, it was a deep, passionate kiss. Her hand was tangled in his hair. Tyrell stopped breathing. He stared at the photo. His hand started to tremble violently. The photo rattled against the Formica table. "That is not," he stammered. "That looks like—" "It looks like your wife kissing her lover," I said brutally, "because that is exactly what it is." "No," Tyrell whispered. "No, Caleb is family." "She told me." "She lied, Tyrell," I said, "just like she lied about the nursing home, just like she lied about loving you." I reached over and flipped the photo stack to reveal the documents underneath. "Look at the bank transfer, Tyrell. Look at the date." He looked. It was a transfer receipt from the joint account, $50,000, wired to a car dealership in Miami. The memo line said, "For Caleb, new ride." "I bought that car, Tyrell," I said. "My money. The money I gave you to invest in your future. You gave it to her, and she gave it to him." Tyrell dropped the papers. He looked like he was going to be sick. $200,000, Tyrell. I continued, my voice low and hard. "That is how much she funneled to him over 5 years. She paid his rent, she paid his gym fees, she paid for his vacations. While you were begging me for money to fix your roof, she was buying jet skis for her boyfriend in Florida." Tyrell put his head in his hands. He made a sound like a wounded animal. "Why didn't you tell me?" he moaned. "Why did you let me look like a fool?" "I didn't know until the audit, son," I said. "But deep down you knew, didn't you? You knew she was always on her phone. You knew she took trips alone. You knew she didn't look at you the way a wife should." Tyrell looked up. His eyes were wet. "I loved her, Dad. I gave her everything. You gave her nothing." I snapped. "You gave her my things. You gave her my money. You gave her my dignity." I leaned forward across the table. I wanted him to see the fire in my eyes. I wanted him to see the man he had betrayed. "You know, Tyrell, when I was your age, I was working 12-hour days on construction sites. I was a black man in Georgia in the 80s. Do you know what that was like?" Tyrell shook his head mute. It meant I had to be twice as good to get half as much I said. It meant banks laughed in my face. It meant inspectors tried to shut me down because they didn't like the color of my skin. It meant I had to swallow my pride every single day just to put food on the table for you and your mother. I pointed a finger at his chest. But I never bowed down. I never let anyone take my dignity, and I certainly never let anyone mistreat my family. I built a fortress to protect you. And you, I hissed. You let a woman walk in and dismantle it brick by brick. You let her call me old. You let her call me useless. You let her steal the legacy I built for you and hand it to a man who has never worked a day in his life. Tyrell was crying now, silent tears streaming down his unshaven cheeks. "She said she loved me," he whispered. "She said I was the only one who understood her." "She understood you all right," I said. "She understood that you were weak. She understood that you were desperate for approval. She played you, Tyrell, and you helped her play me." I gathered the photos. I stacked them neatly. I pushed them toward him. "Keep them," I said. "You might need them for the divorce lawyer. If you can afford one." Tyrell stared at the picture of the kiss. His expression changed. The sorrow was evaporating, replaced by a hot, burning rage. "She is at the motel," he said. His voice was shaking, but it was different now. It was dangerous. "She is waiting for me to come back with money. She said she was packing." "Packing?" I asked. "She said she was going to her mother's house," Tyrell said. "She said she needed space." I laughed. "She is not going to. Her mother is house, son. She is going to Caleb. She is going to Miami. She is probably booking the Uber right now with the cash she hid in her bra." Tyrell stood up. He knocked the table. Coffee sloshed out of his cup. "No," he said. "No, she is not leaving. Not with my money. Not after what she did." He looked at me. "Dad, I have to go." "Go where, Tyrell?" I asked calmly, taking a sip of my black coffee. "I am going to get the truth," he said. "I am going to make her admit it." He turned and ran toward the door. He did not look back. He did not say goodbye. He ran like a man whose house was on fire. I watched him go. I watched him sprint across the parking lot to the beat-up sedan he had borrowed. I watched him peel out onto the highway tires, screeching. I sat there for a moment in the silence of the diner. Darlene walked over with the coffee pot. Your boy looks upset, she said, pouring a refill. He is having a bad day, Darlene, I said. Growing pains. I looked at the empty seat where he had been. I felt a twinge of sadness. No father wants to see his son broken. But sometimes you have to break a bone to reset it properly. Tyrell was heading back to the motel. He was heading into a storm. He was going to confront a woman who had nothing left to lose. I knew Paige. She was cornered. She was broke. And now she was about to be exposed. Desperate people are dangerous. I took out my phone. I opened the app connected to the dash cam in my truck. I had parked my truck across the street from the motel earlier that morning before coming to the diner. The camera was pointed directly at the door of room 104. I wanted to see the show, but I also wanted insurance, because if I knew Paige, she was not going to go down without a fight. She was going to try one last desperate gambit. I finished my coffee. I left a $20 bill on the table for Darlene. It is time to go. Darlene, I said, standing up. The final act is about to start. I walked out to my rental car. I drove toward the motel. I parked a block away. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. I saw Tyrell, his car skid into the parking lot. I saw him jump out. I saw him kick open the door to room 104. I watched as the door slammed shut behind him. I waited. I did not have to wait long. 10 minutes later, the door flew open. But it was not Tyrell who ran out. It was Paige. And she was screaming. I sat in my rental car across the street from the Blue Ridge Motel. The engine was off, but the window was cracked just enough to let in the humid Georgia air and the sound of the highway. My eyes were fixed on the door of room 104. I checked the time on the dashboard. It had been 12 minutes since Tyrell peeled out of the diner parking lot. He made good time. Anger is a powerful fuel. I looked at the dashboard of my own truck, which I had parked strategically in the spot directly facing room 104 2 hours ago. The truck was empty, but the dash cam was active. It was a high-definition, wide-angle lens equipped with night vision. It was recording everything that happened in the parking lot and, more importantly, through the thin curtains of the motel window. I adjusted the collar of my shirt. Underneath the fabric, clipped securely to my button placket, was a small black device, a body camera, the same kind my security guards used on construction sites. I tapped it once to ensure the green light was blinking. Recording. I was ready. I watched as Tyrell slammed his car door. He did not walk to the room. He ran. He looked like a man possessed. He kicked the door. It flew open, crashing against the interior wall with a sound like a gunshot. I waited 5 seconds. Then I opened my car door and walked across the street. I did not run. I walked with the heavy, measured steps of a man walking into a fire he knows how to put out. Inside the room, the shouting had already started. I could hear Paige's voice shrill and panicked. "Get away from me, Tyrell. Get out." I stopped just outside the open door, standing in the shadows of the walkway. I needed to hear this. I needed the camera to hear this. Inside, the scene was chaotic. The room was a wreck. The mattress was overturned. Clothes were scattered everywhere. Paige was standing by the bathroom door, clutching her oversized purse to her chest. I knew what was in that purse. The $50,000 in cash she had stolen from me. The money she was planning to use to start her new life in Miami with Caleb. Tyrell stood between her and the door. His chest was heaving. "Open the bag, Paige," he shouted. "Show me the money." "Get away from me, you loser," she screamed. "That is my money. I earned it putting up with you and your miserable father for 10 years. "You stole it," Tyrell yelled. "You stole it from my dad. You stole it from us. And you gave it to him, to Caleb." Paige's face twisted into a sneer. "So you know. Good. I am glad you know. Yes, I gave it to Caleb, because he is twice the man you will ever be. He knows how to treat a woman. He does not need his daddy to buy him underwear." Tyrell lunged for the bag. He grabbed the strap. Paige screamed and clawed at his face. Her nails raked down his cheek, leaving 3 bright red lines of blood. "Let go!" she shrieked. She kicked him in the shin. Tyrell stumbled back, but he did not let go of the bag. The leather strap snapped. The purse fell to the floor. It burst open. Bundles of $100 bills spilled out onto the dirty carpet. Tyrell looked down at the money. It was more cash than he had ever seen in one place. "You were leaving," he whispered. "You were really leaving me here with nothing. I was leaving you because you are nothing," Paige spat. "You are a broke, unemployed mama-is boy with a bankruptcy on his record." Why would I stay? She dove for the cash. She started frantically stuffing the bundles back into the broken bag. Tyrell grabbed her arm. Stop it. You are not taking that. That is Dad's money. Paige struggled against his grip. She was like a wild animal. She bit his hand. Tyrell yelled in pain and shoved her away. It was a reflexive move, a defensive shove. Paige stumbled backward. She hit the wall with a thud. She did not fall. She was not hurt. But then I saw her eyes change. I saw the calculation. I saw the gears turning in her head. She looked at Tyrell. She looked at the open door. She looked at the phone lying on the bed. She realized she could not win the physical fight. She realized she could not run past him with the money, so she decided to destroy him instead. You want to play rough? Tyrell, she whispered. Her voice was low, terrifying. Okay, let us play rough. She turned around and faced the wall. Then with a force that made me wince, she slammed her own forehead into the plaster. Thud. She did it again. Harder. Crack. Blood began to trickle down her forehead. What are you doing? Tyrell gasped, backing away. Stop it. You are crazy. Paige turned around. Her face was bleeding. Her eyes were wild. She ripped her own blouse, tearing the buttons off. She messed up her hair. Then she grabbed the phone. She dialed 911. She screamed into the phone. It was a blood-curdling sound. Help me, she shrieked. Please help me. My husband is killing me. He is beating me. He has a gun. Please send the police. He is going to kill me. Address 4500 Peach Highway. Room 104. Hurry. She threw the phone down. She looked at Tyrell and smiled. Blood was running into her teeth. Now you are going to jail, she said. And when the police get here, I am going to tell them you attacked me because I tried to leave. I am going to tell them you and your father conspired to hurt me. She looked past Tyrell and saw me standing in the doorway. Her smile widened. It was the smile of a predator who just caught two rabbits in the same trap. Oh, perfect, she said. The gang is all here. She picked up the phone again. The operator was still on the line asking for details. He is here, Paige screamed into the phone. His father is here too. They are both attacking me. They are trying to kill me. Please hurry. I stepped into the room. Tyrell was shaking. He looked at me with terror in his eyes. Dad, he whispered. She hit herself. I didn't touch her. I swear. I know, son, I said calmly. I saw it. You saw it, Paige laughed. Who is going to believe you? You are the man who locked us out of our house. You are the man who destroyed our clothes. You are the abuser. And I am the victim. Look at my face, Bernard. Look at the blood. She wiped her hand across her forehead and smeared the blood down her cheek. The juries in this town love a battered woman, she hissed. Especially a white woman battered by two black men. You are both going to prison for a long, long time. I stood there and looked at her. I did not feel fear. I felt a profound sense of pity. She was so lost in her own greed she did not realize she was standing in quicksand. Sirens wailed in the distance. They were close. The police station was only 4 blocks away. Dad Tyrell said, his voice rising in panic. We have to go. We have to leave. They are going to arrest us. Stay put, Tyrell, I said. Running makes you look guilty. We have done nothing wrong. The sirens grew louder. Tires screeched in the parking lot. Car doors slammed. Police, open up, a voice boomed. 2 officers burst into the room, guns drawn. One was white, one was black. They looked tense. Hands in the air, the white officer shouted, "Get on the ground, now!" I slowly raised my hands. I knelt on the carpet. It smelled of old beer. Tyrell dropped to his knees beside me, sobbing. Paige collapsed onto the bed, sobbing hysterically. "Thank God you are here," she cried, pointing a shaking finger at us. "They tried to kill me. Look at what they did." The officers looked at her bloodied face. They looked at her torn shirt. Then they looked at us. The black officer moved toward me. He pulled my arms behind my back. The handcuffs clicked tight. They were cold and heavy. "You are under arrest for domestic assault," he said. "You have the right to remain silent." He cuffed Tyrell next. Tyrell was hyperventilating. "I didn't do it," he gasped. "She did it to herself. Please believe me. Save it for the judge," the officer said, hoisting him up. The white officer was attending to Paige. "Ma'am, do you need an ambulance?" "Yes," she sobbed. "I am hurt. My head. They hit me so hard." I watched the performance. It was flawless. She was trembling. She was terrified. She was the perfect victim. "Officer," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "Before you take us away, I would like to make a statement." "You can make a statement at the station," the officer holding me said, pushing me toward the door. "Officer," I said louder, planting my feet, "I am requesting that you secure evidence at the scene. It is vital for your investigation." The officer stopped. "What evidence?" I nodded toward the window. The curtains were open. Across the street, my truck was parked facing the room. "That is my vehicle," I said. "The black Ford F-150. There is a dash cam mounted on the windshield. It is a motion-activated high-definition camera. It has been recording this room for the last hour." Paige stopped crying for a split second. Her eyes darted to the window. And I added, looking down at my chest, "I am wearing a body camera. It is currently recording." I tapped the black button on my shirt with my chin. The room went silent. The only sound was the police radio crackling. The white officer looked at Paige. He looked at the torn shirt. He looked at the blood pattern on her forehead. "Body camera?" he asked, looking at me. "Yes, sir," I said. "I activated it before I stepped out of my car. It recorded the entire interaction. It recorded this woman smashing her own head against the wall. It recorded her threat to send us to jail using her injuries as leverage." Paige stood up. Her legs were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From rage. "He is lying," she screamed. "He is lying. There is no camera. Take them away." "Officer," I said, "if you take the memory card out of this device right now and put it in your laptop, you will see the truth. I consent to the search. I consent to the viewing." The black officer looked at his partner. "Check it," he said. He reached into my shirt and unclipped the camera. He walked over to the patrol car parked right outside the open door. He had a rugged laptop mounted on the console. We waited. Tyrell looked at me. "Dad," he whispered, "you wore a wire." "Always protect yourself, son," I whispered back. "Rule number 1. Paige was pacing now. She was wiping the blood off her face with the back of her hand. She looked like a trapped rat. "I need a lawyer," she said. Her voice had lost the tremor. It was hard now, cold. "I am not saying another word without a lawyer." The officer came back into the room. His face was grim. He looked at Paige. Then he looked at us. "Uncuff them," he said to his partner. "What?" Paige shrieked. "You cannot uncuff them. They are dangerous." "Ma," and the officer said, his voice dropping to a dangerous baritone. "I just watched a video of you slamming your own face into the drywall. Twice. I watched you tear your own shirt. And I heard you plotting to frame these men." He walked over to her. He pulled his handcuffs from his belt. "Turn around," he said. "No," Paige yelled. She tried to back away. She tripped over the bag of money. Cash spilled out again, surrounding her feet like green confetti. "Turn around now," the officer barked. He grabbed her wrist. He spun her around. He cuffed her. "Paige Jefferson, you are under arrest for filing a false police report, perjury, and attempted extortion. And based on this cash on the floor, we are going to have a long talk about theft, too." Paige screamed. It was a primal sound. "You cannot do this. I am the victim. They ruined my life." The officer dragged her toward the door. She kicked and fought. "Wait," she yelled, looking at Tyrell. "Tyrell, baby, tell them. Tell them I was scared. Tell them you hit me. I will forgive you. Just tell them." Tyrell stood there, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had been. He looked at his wife. He looked at the blood on her face, the madness in her eyes. "I did not hit you, Paige," he said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "I loved you, and you hit yourself to destroy me." "Take her away," Tyrell said, turning his back on her. The officers marched her out. I watched through the window as they shoved her into the back of the cruiser. She was still screaming, kicking the window. I looked at the officer remaining in the room. He was looking at the cash on the floor. "We are going to need to take this as evidence," he said. "Of course," I said. "It is my money. I have the withdrawal slips to prove it." The officer nodded. He looked at me with respect. "You came prepared, Mr. Jefferson." I adjusted my shirt. "Officer," I said, "I spent 40 years building things. I know that if you do not have a solid foundation, everything falls down. Tonight, I just inspected the foundation." I looked at Tyrell. He was sitting on the bed, staring at the floor. He looked empty. "Come on, son," I said. "Let us go." "Where?" Tyrell asked. "I have nowhere to go, Dad." I put my hand on his shoulder. "I bought an RV," I said. "A big one. It is parked at the storage lot. It has 2 beds. It is not the Grand Wailea, but it is dry and it is safe. Tyrell looked up at me. Tears were streaming down his face again. "I am sorry, Dad," he whispered. "I am so sorry." "I know, son," I said. We walked out of the motel room, leaving the cash and the bad memories for the police to clean up. The air outside was cool. The sirens had stopped. It was over. The lie was dead. Now, we just had to bury it. The fluorescent lights of the county jail holding area hummed with a sound that drilled straight into my skull. I sat on a metal bench bolted to the floor. My lawyer, Viola Strickland, sat next to me. Her briefcase was open on her lap. She looked as composed as if she were sitting in a church pew. I was waiting for my son. I had posted his bail. Not because I wanted him free, but because I wanted him to hear what I had to say without a pane of bulletproof glass between us. I wanted to smell the fear on him. The heavy steel door buzzed and clanked open. Tyrell walked out. He was wearing his street clothes, but they were wrinkled and smelled of the holding cell. He looked thinner than he did yesterday. His eyes were bloodshot. He walked with a stoop as if the weight of the world was pushing him down toward the concrete. He saw me and stopped. A flicker of hope crossed his face. It was pathetic. He thought I was here to fix it. He thought the daddy protocol had been activated. "Dad," he croaked. His voice was raw. "Thank you. I knew you would not leave me in there. It was hell, Dad. There were guys in there who looked at me like I was food." He walked toward me, reaching out for a hug. I took a step back. I put up a hand. "Sit down, Tyrell," I said. He froze. He looked at my hand, then at my face. The hope died. He sat down on the opposite bench. He wrung his hands together. "Where is Paige?" he asked, looking around. "Did you bail her out too?" "Paige is being arraigned in an hour," I said. "Her bail was denied. Flight risk. And given the video evidence of her assaulting herself to frame us, the judge was not in a generous mood." Tyrell put his head in his hands. "This is a nightmare," he whispered. "I just want to wake up. I want to go home." "You do not have a home, son," I reminded him. "And the nightmare is actually just math. And today we are going to do some addition." Viola cleared her throat. She pulled a thick stack of documents from her briefcase. The sound of the paper sliding across the metal table was loud in the small room. "Mr. Jefferson," she said, addressing Tyrell, "as your father is attorney, I have been instructed to inform you of a change in your financial status regarding your relationship with him." Tyrell looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means the IRS." "Tyrell," I said. He blinked. "The IRS. What do they have to do with this?" I leaned forward. I rested my elbows on my knees. "For 10 years, Tyrell, I gave you money. I paid your credit cards. I paid your car notes. I transferred cash into your accounts. I paid for your vacations. I paid for your clothes." "Yeah," Tyrell said defensively. "You helped us out. You are my dad. That is what dads do." "It was gifts." I shook my head slowly. "No, Tyrell. Gifts are given to people you love and respect. Gifts are given without conditions. But looking back at our relationship, I realized something. You were not my son. You were my employee." Employee, Tyrell scoffed. "I never worked for you." "Exactly," I said. "But you took the paychecks." Viola slid a document toward him. It was a Form 1099 Miss C, a tax form. "Your father has refiled his tax returns for the last 7 years, Viola explained calmly. "He has reclassified every single dollar he transferred to you and Paige. It is no longer classified as a familial gift. It is now classified as compensation for services rendered, specifically caretaking services and property management." Tyrell looked at the paper. His eyes bulged. "Services," he sputtered. "I didn't provide any services, we know," Viola said. "That is the problem. You accepted the payment, which amounted to over $1.2 million over a decade, but you failed to perform the duties. However, the money was received. And since you never declared it as income, you have committed tax evasion." Tyrell stood up. "You cannot do this. You cannot just change it. It was a gift. Everyone knows it was a gift." "Can you prove it?" I asked. "Do you have a letter from me stating it was a gift? Do you have a contract?" "Because I have bank statements showing regular monthly payments. That looks like a salary, Tyrell. And I have sworn affidavits stating that the money was provided with the understanding that you would care for me in my old age, an understanding you violated when you tried to put me in a state-run facility." I watched the realization sink in. He knew how the IRS worked. They shoot first and ask questions later. Viola continued, her voice relentless. We have submitted this corrected information to the Internal Revenue Service this morning. We also submitted a report regarding Page as consulting business, which appears to be a shell company used to launder this unreported income to a third party. Mr. Caleb Thorne. Tyrell winced at the name. The IRS is very aggressive about unreported income, Viola said. They will be issuing a demand for back taxes. Based on the amount plus interest and fraud penalties, you are looking at a bill of approximately $450,000. Tyrell sat down hard. The metal bench clanged. $400,000, he whispered. I do not have $400,000. I have negative $50,000. Then I suggest you get a lawyer, Viola said, closing her briefcase. A tax lawyer. Because unlike your credit card debt, tax debt cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. It stays with you forever, Tyrell. It will garnish every paycheck you ever earn. It will take any asset you ever buy. It is a life sentence. Tyrell looked at me. His face was a mask of pure terror. Dad, he pleaded. Why are you doing this? You are destroying me. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I am not destroying you, Tyrell. I am balancing the books. You treated me like a bank transaction. You treated our relationship like a business deal. So I am treating it the same way. The audit is complete. And you came up short. I turned to walk away. Wait, Tyrell shouted. He lunged for my arm. The guard in the corner stepped forward, his hand on his taser. I stopped. I looked at Tyrell, his hand on my sleeve. Let go, I said softly. He pulled his hand back as if he had touched a hot stove. Dad, please. I will do anything. I will testify against Page. I will sign whatever you want. Just do not do this with the taxes. I cannot survive that. You will survive, I said. You are young. You are able-bodied. You can work. Work, he said. Doing what? I looked at his soft hands, hands that had never held a hammer, hands that had never known a callus. I hear Shady Pines is hiring orderlies, I said. They pay minimum wage. It is honest work, Tyrell. You might learn something. I walked to the door. The guard buzzed me out. I did not look back. I walked out into the corridor. The air was stale, but it felt cleaner than the air in that room. We walked to the courtroom where Page's arraignment was happening. I wanted to see it. I needed to see it. We slipped into the back row. Page was standing before the judge. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair was matted. Her face was swollen from where she had bashed it against the wall. She looked small. State of Georgia versus Page Jefferson, the judge read. Charges include filing a false police report, perjury, and attempted extortion. How does the defendant plead? Not guilty, her public defender said. The prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, the state requests that bail be denied. The defendant has no ties to the community as she has been evicted from her residence. She was apprehended with a large sum of cash indicating a flight risk, and we have video evidence of the crime which suggests a high degree of manipulation and danger to the victims. The judge looked at Page. He looked at the police report. Bail is denied, he said, banging his gavel. Remand to custody until trial. Page screamed. It was a short, sharp sound. Two bailiffs grabbed her arms. She turned and looked at the gallery. She saw me. Her eyes locked with mine. There was no hate left in them. Only fear. Pure animal fear. She knew. She knew about the money I had found in her closet. She knew about the IRS report Viola had filed. She knew that even if she beat the assault charges, she was going to prison for tax fraud and larceny. I watched them drag her through the side door. The heavy chains on her ankles rattled. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful Georgia day. Viola walked beside me. Are you okay, Bernard? She asked. I took a deep breath. I filled my lungs with the hot, humid air. I am fine, Viola, I said. I am better than fine. What now? She asked. Now I go to the car lot, I said. You are buying a car? She asked, surprised. Not a car, I said. I am buying a ticket out of here. I had sold the house that morning. A cash buyer from China. Sight unseen. They wanted the land, not the house. They were going to tear it down. Good, I thought. Let them tear it down. Let them crush the memories into dust. I had taken the money from the sale plus the money I had saved, and I had made a purchase. An RV. A 40-foot Class A motorhome, king-size bed, full kitchen, satellite TV. It was parked at the dealer waiting for me. I was going to get in that RV and I was going to drive. I was going to drive to the coast. I was going to fish. I was going to see the Grand Canyon. I was going to spend every single penny I had on myself. I looked at my phone. Tyrell was calling again from the jail payphone. I looked at the number. I pressed block. Then I took the SIM card out of the phone. I walked over to a sewer grate on the corner. I dropped the little plastic chip through the bars. I watched it fall into the darkness. "Goodbye, Tyrell," I said. I got into my rental car. I drove to the RV dealership. The salesman was waiting. He handed me the keys. "She is all ready, Mr. Jefferson," he said. "Full tank of gas. Where are you headed?" I climbed into the driver's seat. It was high up. I felt like a king on his throne. "West," I said. "Just west." I started the engine. It rumbled with a deep, powerful sound. I pulled out onto the highway. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I turned on the radio. Some old blues song was playing. I smiled. For the first time in 40 years, I did not have a schedule. I did not have a dependent. I did not have a worry. The ink on the closing documents was still wet when I walked out of the title company office in downtown Atlanta. It was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. The sun was shining with that crisp brightness that only comes after a long storm has passed. In my hand, I held a cashier check for $1.1 million. I had sold the house. The buyer was the investment group from Shanghai. They did not care about the crown molding I had installed by hand. They did not care about the rose bushes Etta had planted. They did not care about the memories or the ghosts trapped in the walls. They wanted the land. They were going to bulldoze my castle and build 2 modern glass boxes in its place. When the agent told me their plan, I did not feel sad. I felt relieved. Let them tear it down. Let the bulldozers crush the hardwood floors where my son learned to walk. Let the excavators dig up the yard where he played catch. That life was over. That version of Bernard Jefferson was dead. The man who built a fortress to protect a family that did not exist anymore was gone. I walked to the bank and deposited the check. The teller looked at the amount and her eyes went wide. She offered me coffee. She offered me a seat in the private lounge. I declined. I did not want coffee. I wanted to move. I took a cab to the RV dealership on the outskirts of the city. It was a massive lot filled with gleaming white giants. I had been there the day before to pick out my new home. There she was, a 45-foot diesel pusher, the Integra Cornerstone. It cost $300,000. It was black and silver polished to a mirror shine. It had a 600-horsepower engine that could climb mountains without breaking a sweat. Inside, it had heated porcelain tile floors, a master bedroom with a king-size mattress, and a kitchen better than the one I had just sold. It was not just a vehicle. It was a declaration of independence. The salesman, a young man named Rick, handed me the keys. He looked nervous. It was a lot of machine for one man. "Are you sure you do not want the orientation again, Mr. Jefferson?" he asked. "There are a lot of systems to learn. I know how systems work." "Rick," I said, climbing up the steps, "I spent 40 years building systems. I figure I can handle a generator and a water pump." I sat in the driver's seat. It was high above the ground. The windshield was a panoramic view of the world. I adjusted the mirrors. I checked the gauges. Everything was green. Everything was ready. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. It was a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the chassis. It felt like a heartbeat, a strong, steady heartbeat. I pulled out of the lot. I did not look back at the city skyline. I merged onto the interstate heading west. The traffic was heavy, but up here in my fortress of steel and glass, it did not bother me. I was above it. I drove for 2 hours until the city was just a gray smudge in my rearview mirror. The landscape opened up. Pine trees gave way to rolling hills. The air coming through the window smelled of fresh-cut grass and diesel. I pulled into a rest stop near the Alabama border. A pickup truck was waiting there. Leaning against the hood was a heavy-set black man with a white beard and a fishing hat. It was Otis, my oldest friend. We had worked construction together in the 80s. We had marched together. We had buried our wives together. He looked up as I pulled the massive RV alongside his truck. He whistled low and long. "Damn, Bernard," he said, walking over. "You did not buy a camper. You bought a spaceship." "Get in, Otis," I said, opening the door. "We have fish to catch." Otis climbed in, looking around the cabin with wide eyes. He sat in the passenger seat. "Where are we going?" he asked. "I do not know," I said. "Wherever the road goes. Maybe the Gulf, maybe the Rockies. Maybe we just drive until we run out of road." Otis laughed. "That sounds like a plan." I put the RV in gear and merged back onto the highway. We drove in silence for a while, just two old men watching the world roll by. It was a comfortable silence, the kind you earn after knowing someone for 50 years. Then my phone rang. It was sitting in the cup holder. The screen lit up. The ringtone was loud in the quiet cabin. It was an unknown number. But I knew who it was. I knew the area code. It was the county jail. It was Tyrell. He was using his one phone call for the day. Or maybe he had traded his lunch for an extra call. He was calling to beg. He was calling to blame me. He was calling to ask for bail money I would never pay. I looked at the phone. It vibrated against the plastic holder, buzzing like an angry insect. Otis looked at the phone, then at me. "You going to get that?" he asked. I looked at the road ahead. It was straight and clear. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. "No," I said. "I am not." I picked up the phone. It was still ringing. I could imagine Tyrell on the other end holding the receiver against his ear in the crowded cell block waiting for his father to save him one last time. He was probably crying. He was probably telling the other inmates that it was all a mistake, that he was a victim. He would never understand. He would never understand that he was the architect of his own destruction. He poured the foundation of greed. He framed the walls of deceit. He roofed it with arrogance. And now he had to live in the house he built. I pressed the button on the side of the phone to silence the ringer. But that was not enough. As long as I had that number, he could reach me. As long as I had that connection, he could pull me back into the mud. I pulled the RV over to the shoulder of the highway. The gravel crunched under the tires. "What are you doing?" Otis asked. "Cleaning up the job site," I said. I picked up the phone. I popped the case off. I used my thumbnail to pry open the SIM card slot. The little gold and plastic chip popped out. It was so small. It held so much data, so many memories, so many lies. I rolled down the window. The wind rushed in loud and chaotic. Cars whizzed by at 70 miles an hour. I held the SIM card between my thumb and forefinger. Bernard Otis said softly, "You sure about this? That is your boy." I looked at Otis. "My boy died a long time ago, Otis," I said. "The man in that cell is a stranger who tried to bury me. I am just returning the favor." I flicked my wrist. The tiny chip flew out of the window. It caught the wind for a second, spinning in the sunlight before it disappeared into the tall grass on the side of the highway. It was gone. I sat there for a moment watching the grass wave in the wind. I felt a pressure in my chest. It was grief. It was the final mourning for the son I thought I had. But then the pressure released. It evaporated like mist in the morning sun. I rolled up the window. The cabin became quiet again. I put the phone back in the cup holder. It was just a piece of glass and metal now. It could not hurt me anymore. I put the RV in gear. The engine rumbled. We pulled back onto the road. "You know," Otis said after a few miles, "I heard the fishing is good in Biloxi this time of year." "Biloxi sounds good," I said. I engaged the cruise control. I leaned back in the captain's chair. For the first time in 40 years, I did not have a schedule. I did not have a deadline. I did not have a payroll to meet. I did not have a family to protect. I had a full tank of gas. I had a friend beside me. And I had the open road. I thought about Tyrell sitting in his cell. I thought about Paige in hers. They were trapped in small concrete boxes. They were paying their debts to society and to the IRS. They would spend the next decade blaming each other, blaming the world, blaming me. Let them blame me. I was the villain in their story. But in my story, I was the hero who finally saved himself. Revenge is not screaming. Revenge is not violence. Revenge is not sinking to their level. Revenge is watching the sunset from the dashboard of a $300,000 motorhome knowing that you owe nothing to anyone. Revenge is eating a steak dinner while they eat prison loaf. Revenge is silence. And as I drove west into the dying light chasing the horizon, I realized that the silence was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I was Bernard Jefferson, and I was finally free. This journey taught me the hardest truth a parent can face. You cannot save someone who is determined to destroy you, even if they are your own flesh and blood. For years I mistook enabling for love and my silence for strength. But true strength is knowing when to close the door. My son built his life on the foundation of my generosity, never realizing that the hand that feeds can also be the hand that evicts. If you are holding on to toxic relationships out of obligation, remember this: your dignity is not a negotiable currency. Sometimes walking away is the only way to win. If you enjoyed seeing justice served cold, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of redemption. And tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven Tyrell, or did he get exactly what he deserved?